Today we are going to see. What if Goku fought Grimm? So let's get started. Kabu's eyes, a deep shade of black, slowly fluttered open. He was lying on his back, staring up at a boundless, cloud-strewn blue sky. The air was fresh and crisp, a stark contrast to the oppressive gloom of his recent past. He had tried to get some rest, to find a moment of peace after the chaos that had defined his life for the past few months. But all he got were the familiar, nightmarish flashes of what had brought him here: the battle with Demigra, the trauma, the violence. He sat up, his body aching slightly from the nap. His expression was somber as he rubbed his eyes. So much for a peaceful sleep, he muttered to himself, his voice a low growl. Not when the last few months have been a complete nightmare. Even after coming back from a temporary death in the time stream. He got to his feet, a long sigh escaping his lips. Guess I should figure out what this new world is that I ended up in. Kabu was 27, a Saiyan in the prime of his life. His long, spiky black hair was a mess, with a medium-length ponytail in the back. He wore a dark blue jacket over a black combat shirt, a pair of black combat pants, and Saiyan-style combat boots. Beside him lay a brown knapsack, packed with all the essentials: senzu beans, various capsules with items, and a scouter, a constant reminder of his heritage. He was a time patroller from Universe 7, hailing from Toki City, a hub for fighters from various species: humans, Saiyans, Namekians, Frieza's clan, and Majins, all dedicated to protecting the timeline. Kabu's heroes were none other than the legendary Saiyans, Goku and Vegeta, the strongest warriors in their universe. Inspired by them and the friends he made along the way, Kabu dedicated himself to becoming a time patroller. He mastered combat, harnessed his ki, pushed his body beyond its limits, and even learned some basic engineering from Bulma. His journey, marked by bizarre incidents that took him to other worlds, forged his fighting skills and unlocked the incredible power of the Super Saiyan forms. His reputation as a great time patroller was solidified after he helped defeat the Demon King Demigra for good when he was just 20. However, everything came crashing down for Kabu. The trauma from his encounter with Demigra, who had killed him temporarily in the time stream, left deep psychological scars. Every time he tried to focus on his work, he'd suffer flashbacks, seeing Demigra's face in the place of his opponents. This trauma, along with the lingering pain of past defeats at the hands of Frieza, Cell, and Kid Buu, began to consume him. During a routine patrol, Kabu violently attacked another time patroller who bore a striking resemblance to Frieza. Due to his recognized psychological trauma and history of facing such enemies, he narrowly avoided a severe punishment, receiving only a 3-year suspension from active duty. He was furious and heartbroken, seeing the suspension as an insult to his sacrifices. His friends and mentors tried to help, but Kabu's anger at Demigra and the damage he caused only grew. He lashed out, seeking an outlet for his rage in the only way he knew how: by brutally destroying powerful enemies in training simulations. This recklessness led to a catastrophic incident. Overloading the simulation, he accidentally created a monstrous, great ape version of baby Vegeta. In a rage-fueled Super Saiyan 4 state, Kabu fought and defeated the hollow opponent. But the collapsing simulation and the resulting explosion tragically cost a few lives in the city. This event was the final nail in the coffin. His reputation was already in tatters, and now the responsibility for these deaths weighed on his shoulders. The city's populace no longer trusted him. The only people he could rely on were his closest friends and mentors. Crushed and lost, Kabu felt he had let his anger control him, losing sight of what it meant to be a hero. He couldn't trust himself anymore. In his confusion, he decided to do the only thing he thought was right: leave Universe 7 and find a place to sort himself out. Bulma, a genius in science and engineering, helped him create a temporary portal using a time machine and the supreme Kai of Time's magic. Despite the hesitation of his friends, they knew he had to do this for his own sanity. His mentor, Vegeta, was the most vocal opponent, calling him a slacker. But Kabu promised he would return, stronger than ever, once he had learned to be a better person and a true hero again. He gathered his supplies, packed some extra materials for repairs, and left, with no destination in mind. And here I am, Kabu sighed, scanning the forest. In the middle of nowhere. I wonder what this place is all about. Just then, a distinct ringing came from his knapsack. He unzipped it and pulled out an advanced communication device, a piece of tech from Capsule Corp. A green light was flashing, indicating an incoming call. He activated the device, and Bulma's face, her blue hair and a lab visible in the background, appeared on the screen. "Hey, Kaboo, you made it okay? She asked. Sure did, Kaboo replied. Ended up taking a nap when I got here, if you can even call it that. At least the communication works, Bulma stated, smiling. It should be able to charge itself with solar energy. I'm a genius, after all. As always, you're the best scientist I know, Kaboo said with a soft smile. Glad you and the Supreme Kai of Time didn't turn on me like the rest of Toki Toki City. Hey, we didn't turn on you. A voice chimed in from off-screen. The face of Goku, the goofy, smiling Saiyan and the true hero of Universe 7, appeared next to Bulma. Goku was Kaboo's primary inspiration and a key mentor. It was through him that Kaboo had pushed himself to become the warrior he was today. It's not like you did it on purpose. We've got your back, all the way. Goku assured him. Me, Krillin, Yamcha, Tien, Master Roshi, Piccolo, Gohan, Goten, Chi-Chi, 18, 17, Trunks, the Supreme Kai of Time, Kappa, Hit, Jiren, Broly, I bet even Vegeta, Beerus, and Whis support you, no question. Shut up, Kakarot, mind your own business. Vegeta's angry yell came from off-screen. Thanks, guys, Kaboo said, his voice tinged with gratitude. How are you, Master Vegeta? HMPH. I'm fine, and I just finished my training. It's not like I got weaker because of this clown. You'd better come back strong, or I'll drag your pathetic body back myself. Vegeta's voice was full of frustration, but you knew it came from a place of respect and concern. He respected Kaboo's decision to find himself, even if he didn't agree with the method. Kaboo, Bulma said, getting his attention. Right, sorry, he apologized. Anyway, don't worry about me, I'm planning to come back eventually, and I'll be stronger than ever. Just you wait, HMPH. You better, boy, Vegeta grunted. Sure thing, buddy, Goku said, his smile bright. You take care of yourself. If you ever need a hand, let me know, and I'll be there in no time. I can't wait to fight someone, this is getting me excited. I know you will, and so will I, Kaboo replied. A small smile forming on his face. Catch you all later. He ended the call, the device's screen going dark. Now then, he sighed, looking up through the canopy. Time to find some life. With a powerful leap, Kaboo shot up to the top of the nearest tree. He flew from branch to branch, moving higher and higher until he cleared the tree line. From his vantage point, a vast, unknown landscape unfolded before him. He saw a dense forest, a large mountain range in the distance, a massive lake, and a small town a few miles away. This was his new world, and his new journey was about to begin. Looks pretty nice from up here, Kaboo muttered to himself, taking in the picturesque view. A good place for a fresh start. Now, what's a planet with so many weird creatures got to offer an X-time patroller like me? Just then, a piercing cry cut through the air. Fear-o! Kaboo whipped around. A long-beaked, long-necked bird was hurtling straight at him. He was a little shocked by its appearance. A feathered blur of motion. He dodged instinctively, ducking beneath the bird's outstretched talons and narrowly avoiding its sharp beak as it tried to jab his hair. The creature shrieked again, an unusual, aggressive caw, and flew off. What was that? Kaboo demanded, a hand going to his hair. And watch the hair. What kind of bird is that? Deciding to stay on the ground, Kaboo descended with a graceful landing. He took a closer look at his surroundings. He now noticed there were more than just the aggressive bird he had encountered. He could sense their energy signatures more docile. Smaller birds perched in the trees. He saw small, purple rats with bushy tails scurrying on the ground, green spiders with face markings on their backs crawling up trunks, and even tiny, pink-bodied creatures with weed-like propellers on their heads that helped them float about. There were even green and yellow striped caterpillars inching their way up the trees. There are a lot of weird creatures here, Kaboo noted to himself. Their energy signatures aren't powerful, maybe around FF rank or F rank at most. He pondered for a moment. Are they native to this land? There's no point in thinking about it. They're probably not even worth challenging. I should go find the town nearby. He activated his ki, getting into a running stance. With a powerful push-off, he took off at incredible speeds. The burst of air creating a small shockwave. He wove through the trees with practiced ease and timing. Along the way, he saw small, brown heads with pink noses pop out of the ground. Only to dive back in when he blurred past. My apologies, he called out as he raced on. Soon, he found an open path within the forest and shot down it, heading straight for the town. What would have taken an ordinary person a long time was over in less than a minute for Kaboo. He burst out of the trees and came to a sudden halt, deactivating his ki. He noticed immediately that he was drawing attention. The stares were familiar, and his heart sank with trepidation. In his universe, the looks he got were often filled with disgust, regret, fear, and even hatred due to his past actions. He braced himself for a similar reception. However, as he looked around at the people, he realized their expressions weren't what he initially feared. They were a mix of confusion, curiosity, and awe. He read it was simply because he had appeared out of nowhere at such an impossibly high speed. Guess no one's ever seen a person move like this before, especially not a Saiyan like me, Kabu mused, looking at his ki energy. Best not to draw too much attention to myself. He started to walk at a normal pace, moving past the people who were still staring at him. The town was old-fashioned compared to his world. He was used to sprawling metropolises and open plains, not this rustic, natural setting. The homes were spaced far apart, as if nature was a welcome part of the town rather than something to be pushed away. While he could see a larger city in the distance, it was still far smaller than the cities of his home universe. The biggest difference, however, was the presence of those strange creatures he had encountered earlier. Many of them were with people, playing with them, helping with chores, and simply coexisting. He also noticed something even more unusual. These creatures were using a strange form of ki. He saw a blue, armless creature with whiskers shooting water from its mouth to wash a car. The purple rat he saw earlier was assisting someone with firewood, its teeth glowing with an otherworldly energy. He even saw a yellow mouse-like creature using electricity to power a scientist's machine. So the creatures aren't unusual to them at all, Kabu noted. What's more, they seem to have some sort of powers. Even if they're only FF rank and D rank. I wonder what they are. Cyndaquil, use quick attack. A boy's voice shouted from a distance. Totodile, stop him with bite. A girl's voice followed. Kabu's curiosity was piqued. He raced toward the source of the commotion, his steps light but swift. He found a makeshift battlefield where two young humans, a boy and a girl, were locked in a fierce, yet friendly, confrontation. The boy had a black and yellow cap pulled over his spiky black hair. He wore a red and white jacket, black pants, and red, white, and gray sneakers. A backpack was slung over his shoulders, and a sleek blue device was strapped to his left wrist. In front of him stood a small, cream and dark green creature with red dots on its back, a mouse-like animal with what looked like tufts of fiery hair. The girl wore a cap with a yellow seam over her teal hair, which was tied into two spiky ponytails. She had on a white open jacket over a red top, dark green shorts with yellow stripes, and white sneakers. A pink device, similar to the boy's, hung from her neck. Her partner was an aqua blue reptile with a gator-like face, a cream-colored stripe across its belly, and red spines running down its back to its tail. Cyndaquil, use smokescreen. The boy, whose name was Ethan, called out. Cyndaquil. The creature chirped, breathing out a thick cloud of black smoke that quickly consumed the battlefield, obscuring everything. Kabu's sharp Saiyan eyes, however, could see through the haze. He watched as the creature's back burst into flame or it shot a barrage of small ember shots at the gator, which endured the attack with surprising resilience. That's it, buddy, Ethan cheered. Good strategy, Ethan, the girl, Chris, countered with a smirk. But you just gave away your position. Totodile, use water gun. Toto, deal. The gator roared, unleashing a powerful jet of water from its mouth. It struck the fire mouse squarely, sending it flying backward with significant force. The small creature landed hard, sliding across the dirt. Ethan rushed to catch it, stumbling backward and falling onto his back. The smoke cleared, revealing the results of the attack. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Ethan. Chris panicked, running toward him with her Totodile in tow. Ethan was already back on his feet, cradling his partner, who looked visibly weakened. Quill, the mouse groaned. What's going on here? The three of them heard Kabu's deep voice. They turned to see him approaching, his expression a mix of concern and confusion. Are those creatures okay? They took a beating, but they seem pretty resilient. You mean our Pokemon? Chris asked, bewildered by his question. Oh, yeah, they'll be fine, Ethan said, gently petting his partner. It's just a Pokemon battle. Poke what now? Kabu echoed, a puzzled look on his face. The name felt strangely familiar, as if from a half-forgotten dream, but he couldn't place it. Ethan and Chris exchanged a look, then turned back to Kabu. You've never seen a Pokemon battle before? Chris asked, her voice incredulous. Sorry, kid, can't say that I have, Kabu answered sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head. Come to think of it, Ethan said, scanning Kabu from head to toe. You look kind of different. I've never seen anyone like you in Johto before. Not to mention, he pointed at Kabu's jacket. Your muscles are freaking huge. He's right, Chris chimed in. You look like you've been living at a gym. Johto, Kabu echoed again. Yeah, this region, Ethan said, now even more confused. You didn't even know that. To be honest with you, I'm not very familiar with this place, Kabu admitted. In fact, I'm from so far away that I've never even heard of Pokemon. The two kids were utterly speechless, their mouths agape. Are you serious? Chris finally gasped. You've never even seen a Pokemon before? Ethan repeated, his eyes wide. Dead serious, Kabu responded, feeling increasingly awkward. He had been through something similar when he was flung into another universe, but this was a different kind of strange. He felt a familiar headache coming on. What's all the commotion about? A new voice asked. They all turned to see a middle-aged man with short brown hair and glasses approaching. He wore a lab coat over a teal shirt, green pants, and brown shoes. Professor Elm, Ethan greeted him. Oh, hello there, Ethan. Hello, Chris, the man said warmly. I trust you two are taking good care of the Pokemon I gave you. Yeah, Cyndaquil is awesome, Ethan answered, holding his partner up. I can't wait to get better with him. Never mind that, Chris interjected, gesturing toward Kabu. This person just told us he's never seen a Pokemon before. Professor Elm's expression turned to one of pure shock as he looked at Kabu. Is that true? You've never seen one before? Seen one, Kabu replied, his voice a little more confident now. I don't think I've ever even heard of one before. Elm looked at him with a mix of concern and fascination. Come with me to my lab, he said. I can help you from there. Can I come too? Ethan asked, his curiosity winning out over his earlier panic. I really want to know why he's never heard of Pokemon. Me too, Chris seconded. Alright, that's fine by me, Professor Elm said, looking back at Kabu. Unless you have any concerns. No, that's not an issue, Kabu replied. He figured he'd have to explain his situation eventually, and a private setting seemed better than doing it out in the open. I guess I should probably explain a few things in private. The group of four, led by Elm, made their way down the street to what was clearly a laboratory. While it wasn't as advanced as Bulma's lab, it was close enough to be impressive. They entered, passing by several people in lab coats working on various machines. Kabu glanced at the technology, feeling a faint admiration for its complexity, though he knew Bulma's inventions were far superior. He decided to keep that thought to himself. A few moments later, the four of them were in what Kabu assumed was Elm's personal office. Kabu sat on a sofa, while Elm took a seat at his desk. The two kids, Ethan and Chris, sat on another sofa nearby. I'm sorry for the trouble I've caused, Kabu apologized, feeling the familiar weight of his past. It's no problem at all, Elm replied, genuinely intrigued. Frankly, it's baffling to hear you've never encountered a Pokemon before. This world is filled with them, you should have at least seen one. Yeah, about that, Kabu muttered, feeling awkward again. He took a deep breath. I don't know if you'll believe this, but I have a reason. An unbelievable reason, Elm summarized. What in the world could that be? Ethan whispered to Chris. There are a lot of possibilities, she whispered back. Kabu paused, gathering his thoughts. If I told you I'm actually from another universe and not a human being, would you believe me? A brief silence fell over the room. Ethan was the first to speak. You're kidding, right? That wasn't among the possibilities I considered, Chris noted, her eyes wide. Are you truly from another universe? Elm asked, his professional curiosity overriding his skepticism. And you're not a human? It would make some kind of sense, but do you have any proof? Sure, I have proof, Kabu replied. He pulled his tail out from beneath his clothes, revealing its brown, monkey-like length. The three stared at it in shock. He then dug into his knapsack and pulled out his advanced phone. Scrolling through it, he found a picture of himself at age 20, surrounded by his mentors and friends. He showed it to them, letting them examine both the picture and the advanced device. Incredible, Elm gasped, his eyes glued to the phone. This technology as well, it's so different from anything in my lab. And far more advanced. Really? Chris asked, leaning in for a closer look. Are those things around you Pokemon? Ethan asked, pointing at the diverse group of characters in the photo. No, they're other species besides humans. There are Saiyans, Namekians, a Frieza clan member, and a Majin, Kabu explained. The Universe 7. I'm from is home to all kinds of species. The ones around me are the heroes and time patrollers of that universe. I was trained by them. I'm a Saiyan. Cool. So you're a hero, Ethan exclaimed. Can I touch your tail? You're a little quick to believe this guy, aren't you? Chris muttered to Ethan. Kabu's face faltered at the question. Well, I'm a time patroller, or was. And no, you can't touch my tail. I had to get away for a while. Please don't press me on it. I don't want to talk about it. The kids looked at Elm, who closed his eyes in thought. Alright, I understand, but I'm still not totally convinced you're from another universe, even with the tail. I knew you'd say that, Kabu sighed. After all, you Earthlings have never been outside your own galaxy before. Hey, what about that weird logo? Ethan asked, pointing at the Capsule Corp symbol on Kabu's phone. Are they not from this universe? That would be Bulma. She's a great scientist, Kabu answered. Would you like a demonstration of my capabilities? If you can, Elm said. Would this room be too cramped? Yeah, I might accidentally cause some collateral damage in here, Kabu replied. Looking at the nearby window. I'll take the demo outside. Without a moment's hesitation, Kabu leapt out of the chair, ran to the window, opened it, and jumped out, much to the trio's horror. He hovered for a second before landing lightly on the ground outside. He then got into a running position and took off, running so fast he was invisible to the naked eye. He circled the building a few times to demonstrate his speed, creating a visible blur. After coming to a halt, he jumped and started flying with his ki. He let out a roar, his ki aura flaring around him as he began shadowboxing in the air. A display of his immense power. He then unleashed a flurry of energy blasts at a stand of trees, which exploded and turned to ash instantly. Next, he cupped his hands together, his energy gathering into a very familiar technique. He turned to a large boulder nearby, concentrating all his power. Kamehameha! Ha! He thrust his hands forward, releasing a powerful blue energy wave. The trio watched in awe as the boulder was utterly obliterated. A massive crater was left in the ground, and smoke billowed up from the impact point. Kabu dispersed his ki aura, flew back to the window, and landed inside the room without a sound. The three humans stood speechless, their mouths agape. I hope that's enough to suffice as proof, Kabu said. That was only a fraction of my power. I'd say so, Elm replied, a newfound respect in his voice. I'm starting to believe what you say is true. That was incredible, Chris stammered, thinking about what a fraction of my power really meant. You were just like a Pokemon out there, Ethan exclaimed, completely starstruck. So cool. Kabu just rubbed the back of his head, a small, proud smirk on his face, satisfied that he had finally proven his claims. Once everyone had calmed down from the display of power, they returned to their seats. Professor Elm, his mind racing with new information, was the first to speak. I'm fascinated by your home universe. But I understand it might be a sensitive topic, Elm said. I won't press you on it. I appreciate that, Kabu responded. It would be difficult to explain my origins without causing a lot of panic. I'd be grateful if you didn't look too deeply into it or tell anyone. Sure, I can keep a secret, Ethan said with a confident nod. It might be a bit hard to keep him quiet, but I'll make sure he behaves. Chris added, giving Ethan a pointed look. So why did you come to our universe, anyway? Like I said, I needed to get away from my universe for a while, Kabu repeated. For now, I'm just trying to figure out what I can do here. Based on what I've seen, it seems like these Pokemon are the big deal. He glanced over at the corner, where Cyndaquil and Totodile were happily eating some kind of pet food. Kabu could sense their energy signatures, which felt like a solid FF rank. Their power levels are around FF rank, Kabu stated, almost to himself. FF rank. Elm looked confused. I'm sorry, I don't understand. What does that mean? Yeah, us too, Ethan chimed in. Oh, right, you guys wouldn't know about that, Kabu said, realizing his mistake. I'll make it simple. He leaned forward, explaining the system. The Time Patrol uses a ranking system to quickly assess a warrior's strength. It starts at F for beginners and goes all the way up to S, foe. Are the most powerful beings in the multiverse. Each letter is a major jump in power. A new recruit is an F, an experienced fighter a Super Saiyan a CCC, a Majin Buu level fighter a BBB, and a God tier fighter an AAA. The highest rank, S, is for legends whose power is nearly incomprehensible. This system helps the Time Patrol understand a fighter's potential without needing exact numbers. Whoa, those ranks are awesome! Ethan exclaimed, his eyes gleaming with excitement. I'm curious, what rank are you? Elm asked, his gaze fixed on Kaboo. In my base form, I'm a CC rank, Kaboo answered calmly. But my strongest form is around a BB rank. A stunned silence filled the room. The trio's shock was palpable. They had been impressed by his demonstration, but this new information elevated him to an entirely different level of power. But wait, Chris said, her mind catching up. How did you know our Pokemon's rankings just now? That's easy, Kaboo replied. I sensed their key signature. Key, Professor. What does that mean? Ethan asked, turning to Elm. I can't say I've heard of it before, Elm admitted, looking back at Kaboo. Would you mind explaining? Sure, why not, Kaboo said with a shrug. I'm not surprised you don't know. He began his second explanation. Ki is the energy that flows through all living things. Think of it as a person's inner strength, willpower, and life force all rolled into one. Everyone has Ki, but most people don't know how to use it, so it remains dormant. Special people, like me, learn to harness and control their Ki. Power level is a reflection of that Ki. The more Ki you can generate and control, the stronger you are. He continued, you can use this Ki to do things like enhance physical abilities, create energy attacks, fly, and sense the Ki of others. Elm scribbled notes furiously. This is fascinating. It sounds similar to the concept of aura, but it seems to be just scratching the surface of Ki's true nature. Glad you like it, Elm. So, about the Pokemon. Kaboo said, steering the conversation back on track. Right, you want to know about Pokemon. Elm answered, going to his computer. He pulled up screenshots of errant landscapes filled with all sorts of creatures. Pokemon are the dominant species that live in this world, and there are countless kinds of them. We're still discovering new ones. They live everywhere in the open lands, forests, seas, mountains, and even in our towns. They have special powers and are capable of miraculous things. Humans and Pokemon live together, Chris added. Some bond as a trainer and partner, while others just live peacefully together. Many trainers work with their Pokemon in all sorts of ways, including battles like the one you saw us do. So a lot of humans have these Pokemon as partners. Kaboo asked. Not everyone, but most do, Elm confirmed. Yeah, and many who do try to become the best Pokemon trainer out there, like me. Ethan declared, pointing to himself with a grin. I'm just starting out, but I know I'll be the best, like no one ever was. I'm sure someone's been that strong, Chris muttered under her breath. Sounds like a great start, even if you're getting a little ahead of yourself. Kaboo replied with a smirk. You know, maybe I should become one of these Pokemon trainers. If you want to, you came to the right place, Elm told him. You usually start at a Pokemon center or a lab like mine to begin your journey. However, there's always a however, isn't there? Kaboo echoed, his voice laced with mild concern. Since you're from another universe, you don't have any personal information to set you up as a legal trainer, Elm finished. Oh, that's no problem, Kaboo said, pulling out his phone. All my info is on this phone. I'm not on Bulma's level of hacking skills. But I'm close enough. Just give me access to your computer, and I can easily upload my intel. Geez, is there anything you can't do? Ethan asked as Kaboo walked Elm sighed and began tapping away at his phone. Where would I begin with that? Kaboo replied with a grin, connecting his phone to the computer. Within a few minutes, all his info was in the system, but there was one small issue. We can't just put Toki City as your origin, Elm pointed out. Maybe you should pick a place in this region. No issue there, Kaboo said, his fingers flying across the screen as he accessed a map of the Johto region. He randomized a location, and the cursor landed on a city known as a Critique City. And done. That wasn't so hard. Kaboo disconnected his phone. I can't say that was entirely legal. But it will do, Elm said, deciding to overlook the technicality given the extraordinary circumstances. Now that you're a legitimate citizen, I can get you set up with your very own Pokemon. Alright, you're going to get your first Pokemon, just like us. Ethan exclaimed, his excitement palpable. Let's go. Cyndaquil, you ready? The fire mouse, now done with its meal, waddled over to him. Ethan pulled a red and white ball with a button on the front from his pocket. Let's take a rest, he told his partner. A red beam of light shot out from the ball, enveloping Cyndaquil and transforming it into a burst of red energy that was pulled inside. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Kaboo exclaimed, shocked by the sight. What the hell was that? Oh, that, Chris asked, picking up a similar ball that she was holding. That's just a Pokeball. It's how we carry Pokemon around with us wherever we go. A Pokeball? Kaboo asked, taking one from her hand to examine it. It was a perfectly spherical device. Expertly crafted. Pokeballs are capsule devices used to carry Pokemon, Elm explained. You can call them out if you need them, or bring them back in when they're not needed. Isn't it uncomfortable to be inside those things? Kaboo asked, his brow furrowed with concern. The idea of confining a living being, even a non-human one, made him uneasy. Our experts will tell you they are spacious and comfortable for any Pokemon, Elm assured him. They're a safe place for them to rest. If you want to call them out, you do it like this. Ethan, understanding the cue, nodded and tossed his Pokeball into the air. Come on out, he shouted. The capsule opened with a click, and in a flash of white light, Cyndaquil reappeared, cooing happily. Ethan crouched down, petting his partner. See, he's doing okay. Okay, just don't do that again, Kaboo said, still a mix of fascinated and worried. The device was an incredible piece of technology, but the idea of keeping a living creature contained felt wrong. It reminded him of the darker sides of his universe, a place where freedom was a luxury. He held his tongue, however, understanding that the Pokemon seemed to be okay with it. Let's head downstairs now, Elm told the three of them. Ethan and Chris returned their Pokemon to their Pokeballs. Kaboo, still pondering the technology, put his tail back up round his waist like a belt and followed Elm downstairs to the main lab. A couple of lab assistants were waiting for them, a black-haired girl with a ponytail and a young man with short blonde hair. Since Chris and I already got our Pokemon, the third one would be yours, Ethan said to Kaboo. What was the last one again? I got Totodile, and you got Cyndaquil, which leaves the grass-type starter, Chikorita, Chris answered. Grass-type, Kaboo echoed, the term new to him. Yeah, every Pokemon has a type, or sometimes a pair of types, Chris explained. For starters, my Totodile is a water type, while Ethan's Cyndaquil is a fire type. But types aren't everything, strategy is just as important. Kaboo looked down, a contemplative expression on his face. Pokemon were a fascinating species. If he could learn more about them, and maybe become a great trainer, he could even teach them key training and martial arts like his mentors taught him. It could be a way to improve his own fighting style, get stronger, and learn to be a time patroller in a different way. He needed to find his Saiyan pride and his spirit again. We had a problem while you were gone, Professor, the female assistant said, her voice serious. Someone broke into the lab and stole the last Pokemon we had saved, the male assistant explained. The four of them gasped in shock. Someone stole Chikorita, Elm exclaimed, but I was planning to give it to this young man. How did this happen? We're not sure, the male assistant replied. We haven't told anyone yet, as it just happened. He pulled out a tablet. However, we did get this brief footage. He showed them a video of someone in a black hoodie darting in and out of the lab. The only identifiable feature was a hint of red hair. We're still cleaning up the footage, but we'll get a better image of the person soon, the female assistant assured him. Poor Chikorita, Chris said sadly. Whoever stole that Pokemon is going to answer to me. Ethan growled, cracking his knuckles in a fighting stance. We'll leave it to the authorities to search for them, Elm told Ethan, his tone calming. For now, I don't know if we have any Pokemon available for Kaboo. Kaboo's face fell slightly. Did he really have to wait to get his first Pokemon? Actually, sir, we do have one other Pokemon, the male assistant spoke up. The one you got for your research on evolutions. Oh, yes, Elm said. Then sighed. But I went through so much work to get it specifically for research. If you need it for research, I understand, Kaboo assured him, trying not to show his disappointment. I can still wait. Elm took a moment to look at Kaboo, then sighed again. No, it might be better if you take it. Besides, I can always get another one. He turned to his assistants. Bring it out for our friend here. I'm actually 27 years old, Kaboo blurted out, a hint of frustration in his voice. Elm, Chris, and Ethan stared at him, dumbfounded. For real, but you look so young for that age, Elm said. Completely stunned. My kind ages differently than others, Kaboo explained with a shrug. Yeah, that makes sense, Elm said, processing the revelation before turning back to his assistants. Just bring it here anyway. Yes, sir, they said in unison, walking to a corner of the lab to retrieve the Pokémon. This is awkward. He's a freaking adult, and I thought he was 18, Chris muttered. Are you sure, Professor? Kaboo asked again. You don't have to do so much for me. For someone who has never seen a Pokémon, I'm fine with letting one go so you can start learning immediately. And perhaps your unique background will give me the research results I need. A moment later, the male assistant returned, holding out a Pokeball for Kaboo. He took it, examining the smooth, cool surface. Inside is a very special Pokémon called an Eevee, Elm explained. Eevee, Chris gasped. That's a very special Pokémon that can evolve into so many different things. Evolve, Kaboo echoed, looking back at her. Pokémon can evolve. Yes, but that's a loaded subject in itself, Chris answered. Tell you what, I know of a great book about Pokémon that can help you learn the basics. We can head to the library after this. Quote, I'm not much for books, but sure, Kaboo answered, looking at the Pokeball. So, I just toss the ball like Ethan did, and that's it. That's pretty much all there is to it, Elm confirmed. Go on, give it a try. Kaboo nodded and, with a gentle toss, called out, Eevee, show me what you got. The ball opened with a flash, and a small, brown, fox-like crete. Ewer with a fluffy tan collar and tail tip appeared. Ee-vee-vee-vee. The creature chirped, walking up to Kaboo and sitting in front of him. It's so cute, Chris swooned. Kaboo reached down, gently scooping Eevee up by the waist and holding it to his eye level. It looked back at him, tilting its head curiously, before squirming out of his hands and leaping onto his arm, then his shoulder. Kaboo was impressed with its balance and skill. Eevee sniffed his cheek before giving it a small, affectionate lick. He was surprised by the gesture, then felt it rub its head against his cheek. He felt a wave of nostalgia, remembering how Brawly and Gohan had a similar affinity for nature and animals. He sensed Eevee's energy level, and though it was a low FFF rank, he felt something else, a great, primal potential waiting to be awakened. He remembered how Saiyans could unlock new power, like the Super Saiyan 4 form, through a similar hidden potential. Could these Pokémon be the same? He filed the thought away for later. This new journey was just beginning. She seems to have taken a liking to you, Kaboo, Ethan stated, smiling at the sight of the Eevee on Kaboo's shoulder. Indeed, Elm agreed, a look of fascination on his face. It's rare for a Pokémon to become so affectionate with a brand new trainer for the first time. She must see something special in you. Wait, Kaboo asked, looking at the Eevee. So this one is a girl? Yep, Pokémon have genders, just like people, Elm explained, though there are some Pokémon that are only one gender, and others that have no gender at all. Kaboo gently rubbed the Eevee's head. You know, that book might be a good idea to read every once in a while, he said, looking at Chris. I'll definitely take you there after this, she assured him. Before you go, I have one last set of things to give you, Elm said to Kaboo, walking back to a station and returning with a handful of items. In his hands were 5 smaller Pokeballs and a green, rectangular device with a blue holographic screen. These Pokeballs are for you to start your journey, Elm explained, taking one and pressing a button, causing it to expand to its normal size. You just do is to expand it and toss it at a Pokémon you want to catch. And this, he handed Kaboo the device, is a Pokédex. It contains all the current information on all known Pokémon. This particular one was imported from a professor in the Kalos region, with all the information he's added. Another region? Kaboo asked, taking the device. Point it at Eevee so you can get her information, Chris instructed. Kaboo aimed the device at his new partner. The Pokédex expanded vertically, making the holographic screen bigger and displaying a picture of Eevee. A female voice began to speak. Eevee, the evolution Pokémon. Thanks to its unstable genetic makeup, this special Pokémon conceals many different possible evolutions. Not bad, Kaboo muttered. So this Pokédex has information on all Pokémon. I might need to hack into it and download the information onto my phone. Just be careful, Professor Elm warned. That Pokédex now has all your personal information that's used to register you for official events. That won't be a problem at all, Kaboo replied, pocketing the Pokédex and the 5 Pokéballs. Now that you're all set, you should really get ready for your journey, Ethan told him, looking at Kaboo's knapsack. We should start with that bag of yours. You mean like your guys' backpacks? Kaboo asked, looking at the bags Ethan and Chris wore. No offense, but I'm not sure if I can carry all my stuff in those. The backpacks are a lot larger than they look, Chris explained. Ethan then dug into his bag and pulled out a foldable bicycle that was clearly much larger than the bag's exterior. Just another bit of technology from our world, Ethan stated. Well, you learn something new every day, Kaboo said, impressed. It reminds me of the hollow inventory we use in my universe's pocket dimensions. By the time evening arrived, Kaboo had used a capsule to transform it into a small house near the Pokemon Center, a place for healing injured Pokemon and a rest stop for trainers. The capsule house, with its electricity and running water, astonished the two young trainers and Professor Elm, who were a little jealous of the superior technology. Kaboo had Chris and Ethan guide him around town to gather supplies and information. He even offered his new friends a place to stay for the night, and they were thrilled with the comfort and amenities. Kaboo was now looking at his new shoulder backpack, which was white and dark blue with the Capsule Corp. And Saiyan symbols on it. It contained everything from his knapsack, plus the new supplies and food he had purchased. Good thing there was a currency exchange in town, Kaboo muttered, flipping through a book Chris had recommended, titled A Beginner's Guide to the Pokemon World. I wasn't sure if zennies would work here, but it turns out they're considered extremely valuable currency, which got me a lot of spending money. He looked to his side and saw Eevee curled up on his bed, half asleep. He smiled, gently petting her head. She opened one eye and said, Eevee, with a content sigh. You're a rather adorable Pokemon, Kaboo said softly. I'm still new to all this. I hope you'll be patient with me. He returned to his book. Turning to a page about evolution. He learned that Eevee was a special case, capable of evolving into 8 different forms. A Pokemon can evolve and become better than it was before, Kaboo mused, looking up at the ceiling. It's almost similar to a Saiyan's transformations, though Pokemon do it in stages. He wondered, I wonder if I can do the same. Eevee, his new partner looked at him with a curious tilt of her head. Oh, not like the kind of evolution in the book, Kaboo explained, guessing her question. I mean an emotional and instinctual evolution. I need to find a way to become a better warrior than I was before and overcome my trauma. I have to in order to become a time patroller again. He closed his book, put it away, and turned off the lights. He changed into a short sleeve shirt and shorts and crawled into bed next to Eevee, who curled up beside him and fell asleep. Kaboo smiled faintly at her before drowsiness took over. He was able to find some rest, but nightmares of his past still plagued him. He wished that one day, with the help of this new universe and his new Pokemon partner, he would be able to overcome them. Blank. In an unknown location, 2 figures floated in the air above the planet. They were Mira and Taua, the Time Breakers, from a different timeline in Universe 7. They were enemies of Kaboo, dedicated to restoring the demon realm to its former glory. Taua. Interesting, very interesting. It seems this monkey is a resident with these humans and creatures. Mira. What is our objective, Taua? What good does this universe have to offer that's worth our time? Taua. It's rather simple, Mira. If Kaboo is here and plans to stay, perhaps we should do the same. After all, it's too good an opportunity to waste. These creatures are new subjects for my experiments, and you can take on any opponents you like to prepare for our next confrontation with him. You will get your revenge, and if anyone gets in our way well. They won't have a happy ever after. Mira. Then so be it. I will get my revenge and prove to you that I am your ultimate creation in all the multiverse. Taua. You will, Mira. You will. It was early in the morning, the sun just beginning to cast long shadows across New Bark Town. Kaboo had already polished off his breakfast, a surprisingly delicious meal prepared in his capsule house. And had ensured Eevee had her fill of Pokemon food. He stood at the town's edge, where a weathered wooden sign proudly declared, Route 29. There, he reunited with Chris and her Totodile, who greeted him with bright smiles. Morning, Kaboo, Chris greeted, her teal hair shimmering in the morning light. Are you ready to go on your adventure? Pretty much, Kaboo answered, shifting the weight of his new backpack, which felt surprisingly light despite being packed with all his belongings. Still, I am impressed at how I was able to pack all my stuff in this little backpack. I wonder if it's in the fabric that gives that larger than exterior effect. Maybe I should give Bulma a call sometime and tell her about it. I never really bothered into looking at it, Chris answered with a shrug. Clearly accustomed to the advanced technology. Speaking of looking at it, Kaboo noticed the missing third member of their group. Where is Ethan? Did he sleep in? Is he probably in the grass right now? Or did he just get lost in the woods already? Chris chuckled. Oh, No, he's already on his way to Violet City. Violet City, Kaboo echoed, recalling the map he had studied in the library last night. That's the place past Cherry Grove City, near the Dark Cave. I heard that it's known for a few things, the most prominent being the Sprout Tower, as well as the gym there. Wow, you're already aware of that much? Chris asked, surprised at his quick grasp of the region's geography and landmarks, even for an alien. Those reference books were pretty useful, even if they hurt my brain sometimes, Kaboo admitted, rubbing his temple. Also, I learned a whole heck of a lot about the Pokemon world from those books. That's pretty impressive. Does that mean you are aware of the gyms in the region? More or less, yeah. They are areas where trainers will test their skills. Battle the gym's leader. On a side note, that name totally sucks, by the way, Kaboo explained, a hint of his usual cockiness returning. Defeating them will earn them a badge. By collecting 8 of them throughout the region, you are eligible to take on the Pokemon League of that region, which consists of a group called the Elite Four. A quartet of very powerful trainers, and then there is the champion, the strongest trainer of that region. Defeating that person will earn you the title of champion instead. Did I miss anything else? No, that was actually perfect in a broad stroke, Chris answered, genuinely impressed. You really did your homework. Didn't you sleep at all? Barely. One time I enrolled in an academy on my first day as a student before becoming a time patroller, and other times I ended up having nightmares all throughout the night, Kaboo answered, his gaze dropping, a grim shadow passing over his face. Oh, I see, Chris responded, her cheerful demeanor softening. She was aware of Kaboo being from another universe and a bit of what he did, but she didn't know the full extent of his past trauma. Based on his expression, she decided not to press the matter, and instead continued, well, Ethan has already left to take on the gym there. I did plan to go, but decided to wait for you. Really? Appreciated, kid, Kaboo thanked the girl, a genuine warmth in his voice. Oh, it's nothing, even if you are older than me, Chris answered with a playful roll of her eyes. Besides, Prof. Zer-Elm wanted me to teach you about some things on being a Pokemon trainer. For example, how to battle with your Pokemon. Yeah, I haven't gotten to that part yet, Kaboo noted, pulling out Eevee's Pokeball. Eevee, who had been resting on his shoulder, chirped softly, sensing the shift in his attention. Maybe you can show me the basics of a Pokemon battle. But lucky for you, when it comes to combat, I pretty much learn fast. Like second nature. That's a good thing to know, but first, Chris pointed to an open, grassy area nearby, a perfect spot for a demonstration. Let's start with a zone on understanding your Pokemon's attacks, and properly giving commands. Chris led Kaboo to the open area, a patch of soft grass perfect for a practice battle. Eevee, still perched on Kaboo's shoulder, looked around with bright, curious eyes. Alright, Kaboo, Chris began, her voice taking on a more instructional tone. The first step to being a good trainer is understanding your Pokemon's moves. Why? Oh, you can access their moves from your Pokedex. Kaboo nodded, pulling out the green device. He navigated through its interface, quickly finding the section detailing Eevee's abilities. He saw a list of 4 moves: Tackle, Quick Attack, Sand Attack, and Swift. Like any Pokemon, the maximum number of moves one can learn is 4, he muttered, recalling what he'd read. Eevee is no exception. It's kind of dumb, honestly. In my universe, pretty much everyone can use any technique in a base fight. Maybe this universe is simpler. Chris, oblivious to his internal monologue, continued, now, let's go over what each of those moves does. Tackle is a basic body blow, a direct physical hit. Quick Attack is basically a faster, slightly stronger version of Tackle, where your Pokemon moves with enhanced speed and strength to strike the target. She demonstrated with Totodile, who zipped forward a few feet and then stopped. As for Swift, Eevee can channel energy, starting with a swing of its tail, and send them homing in on the target. Kinda like a Gallic gun or Kamehameha projectile, but weaker. Kaboo's eyes lit up at the comparison, a familiar concept finally making sense. Got it. And Sand Attack? Ah, Sand Attack, Chris explained. A slight smirk on her face. That's a move you initially misunderstood yesterday. It turns out it does no damage, but it blinds the opponent by kicking or brushing sand into their eyes. Now that you're aware of what Eevee can do, there's one more thing you should learn about your partner, and that's her ability, Chris told Kaboo. Right, I read that part, too, Kaboo recalled. Pokemon are able to have an ability, and not all Pokemon have the same ability. While some have a fixed ability, some are known to have a choice between 2 abilities, while others Have a choice between 3 different ones. Yep, you got it, Chris answered, impressed by his retention. Point your Pokédex at Eevee again, and learn what ability she has. Kaboo did as he was told, directing his Pokédex toward Eevee. The device scanned her, and a moment later, the female voice spoke again. It seems like the ability she has is adaptability. Kaboo read the description aloud. That's a terrific one, Chris noted, her eyes widening. Pokémon who use moves of the same type as themselves will be stronger than those of a different type. Adaptability further boosts that effect. And Tackle, Quick Attack, and Swift are all normal type moves, just like Eevee herself. That's a pretty strange ability, but good enough, Kaboo understood, looking down at his partner. You are pretty strong for someone who is only FFF rank. Eevee, his partner blushed, rubbing the back of her head in response to his compliment, clearly pleased. Now that you've learned all of that, there's one more lesson to learn, Chris started. Walking a few paces away from Kaboo before turning around with a Pokeball ready in her hand. The experience of a Pokémon battle. Kaboo nodded in understanding, a smirk forming on his face. He felt a familiar surge of excitement, a thrill that had been dormant for too long. He turned to Eevee, asking, "You ready for this?" "Eevee," she answered, bounding forward. From his shoulder and landing gracefully on the grass, looking prepared to fight. "Totodile, come on out," Chris shouted, tossing her ball forward, summoning her blue gator to the field in a flash of white light. She then called to Kaboo as she explained, "You should probably learn about Totodile a bit. However, a Pokémon that isn't yours will not let you know their moves or ability." "That's fair enough, but also it sounds like a video game," Kaboo answered, pointing his Pokédex at Totodile, which activated with a whir. Totodile, the big jaw Pokémon. The Pokédex's voice resonated. Despite the smallness of its body, Totodile's jaws are very powerful. While the Pokémon may think it is just playfully nipping, its bite has enough power to cause serious injury. "Guess we know to be aware of those teeth," Kaboo noted. Putting his Pokédex away and preparing to command his partner. The battle was about to begin. "I'll let you make the first move," Chris told Kaboo, stepping back and gesturing towards the open field. "No, I insist you do," Kaboo responded, surprising the teal-haired girl. "It's one of my principles as an honorable warrior. I always let my opponent go first." "That's pretty honorable of you," Chris noted. A slight smile playing on her lips. "Guess I'll take you up on that offer. Totodile, use water gun." Her partner inhaled deeply, then shot out a powerful gush of water from its mouth, striking Eevee squarely. Eevee cried out, taking damage and being pushed back a few feet. "You okay?" Kaboo asked his partner, who quickly scrambled back to her feet, shaking off the water. "In a battle, Pokémon do respond if you tell them to dodge," Chris informed him, seeing his concern. "Right, it's like me being in a fight with multiple opponents," Kaboo muttered to himself, making the comparison to his own combat experiences. "Only I'm not commanding myself, but commanding Eevee instead. I'm basically channeling my combat skills into her." He then saw Eevee recover and, with renewed focus, called out, "Eevee, use Quick Attack, attack 3 times over." His partner responded instantly, gathering herself before shooting herself at Totodile with incredible speed, hitting him on the left, then the right. And finally the front, causing the gator to stumble and fall back. "That was amazing, but how about this?" Chris asked, undeterred. "Totodile, use Bite." Her partner immediately came in, its teeth glowing faintly, ready to chomp down on Eevee. "Dodge it now," Kaboo called out, his voice sharp. Eevee responded instantly, twisting her body to avoid the snapping jaws. "Keep up the bite," Chris called out, and Totodile charged in again with its fangs. Eevee saw it coming and continuously dodged, gracefully avoiding getting chomped by the relentless attack. "Gotta find a way out of this," Kaboo told himself. Remaining calm under pressure, he observed Totodile's movements, his mind racing. Think like you are the one in Eevee's place. If my opponent uses the same attack again, what kind of move should I use?" A thought occurred to him, and he called out, "Eevee, jump and use Swift." The evolution Pokémon responded by making a nimble leap, and with a swift swish of its tail, sent a deluge of glowing stars homing in on the reptilian opponent, causing it to panic and get struck multiple times by the attack. "Impressive," Chris noted, surprised by the clever counter. "Just seeing how I would fight in Eevee's position," Kaboo answered, as Eevee landed gracefully in front of him. "My combat experience can become handy in times like this. You would have that, wouldn't you?" Chris muttered, a hint of awe in her voice. She quickly refocused. Totodile, scratch. Her partner charged forward again, claws at the ready. Kaboo didn't respond immediately, closing his eyes for a moment as he waited for the right opportunity. Finally, he sensed when Totodile was close, opened his eyes, and shouted, "Eevee, blind it with sand attack." Eevee turned her back to Toto. Delayan with a swift kick of its hind legs, sprayed sand directly into the water type's eyes, causing him to falter and rub his eyes frantically to clear the sand. "You gotta be kidding me." Chris gasped, caught off guard by the tactical move. "Now, quick attack now, in multiple weak spots." Kaboo called out, his voice a commanding roar. His partner unleashed a flurry of point-blank, speedy hits into Totodile's sides. "Now one more time, quick attack with full force." Kaboo called out again, and his partner delivered a final, powerful, point-blank speed-boosted tackle into Totodile, sending him flying. The gator collapsed to the floor near Chris, with spirals in his eyes. Chris went to her knees, sighing. "Guess we lost that battle." "Wait, is that it?" Kaboo asked, a hint of surprise in his voice. "Yep, the first one to knock out the other is the winner," Chris answered, using her Pokeball to call back her partner to rest. "As long as you do that, then you basically win." Kaboo was amazed, but also a little disappointed that the battle was over so soon, though he wasn't complaining. A universe where you don't kill one another wasn't a bad thing at all, or even justified. It was just a test of strength and skill. And he felt good for once. He looked down at Eevee, who looked back at him, beaming at her achievement. "Still, I am amazed at your skills," Chris stated, rising and walking over to Kaboo. "You had no clue about Pokemon whatsoever before, and yet you battled like a pro." "You really think so?" Kaboo asked, rubbing his face in a little embarrassment. "Oh, without a doubt. You are really great at this. No wonder you learned faster than others." Chris praised him. "You know what, you might be skilled enough to take on the Pokemon League." "You really think so?" Kaboo asked, a flicker of ambition in his eyes. "Sure, Ethan is going to the Violet City gym right now," Chris explained. "I plan to go there, but first I should heal up Totodile before I leave." "What about you?" "Well, if you think I would be good at the Pokemon League, then I guess I'll give it a shot," Kaboo decided, looking down at Eevee. "It wouldn't hurt to see how skilled I am in this, if I go even further." "Great, then that means you, Ethan, and I will be rivals," Chris told Kaboo, her eyes sparkling. "And here's an idea, let's go to Violet City together to take on the gym." "Thanks for the offer, but I think I'll go in a different direction," Kaboo answered, pulling out his advanced phone. After about 10 seconds, he projected a holographic image of the Johto map he downloaded onto it, surprising Chris. "Looking at this map, I would guess that the closest gym would be the one in Blackthorn City. Wouldn't it be better for me to just go there first?" "Maybe," Chris answered, examining the map with concern. "But for one thing, the terrain to get there is a bit tough for newcomers. What's more, I heard that the gym is pretty tough. You will need more than just Eevee to beat it." "Right, I remembered reading about that part." Kaboo recalled from the books he read. "Trainers are allowed to have 6 Pokemon on their person. Any others get immediately sent to the professor you registered as a trainer to." "In other words, Professor Elm." "Correct. Are you familiar with how to capture Pokemon?" the young girl asked. "Not a freaking clue. Wanna teach me how to do that?" "Sure, but we should go into the woods to find a Pokemon. Can I count on you to protect me if any pop up, since Totodile needs some rest?" "Sounds like a fair deal then," Kaboo understood. "Take the lead." Chris led Kaboo into the woods, keeping an eye on the surroundings for any Pokemon. Obtaining new Pokemon can come in multiple forms, Chris explained as they wandered. For most people, you usually find ones in the wild to capture. However, there are occasions of obtaining ones as gifts from people, or trading a Pokemon of yours with them. Sometimes, you get one in the form of an egg. "So all Pokemon come from eggs, huh?" Kaboo asked. "As far as research goes, that is the truth," Chris answered. "But for now, we should start with the basics of getting Pokemon." She turned and saw something from a distance, before whispering, "Oh, here are some, now." Kaboo looked ahead and saw 3 creatures. A raccoon-like Pokemon with a bushy tail sleeping on the ground, a Sentret, a small bird on a tree branch, a Pidgey, and a ladybug-like Pokemon clinging to a tree, apparently asleep, a Ledyba. "Why don't you point your Pokedex at them to understand each?" Chris suggested. Kaboo nodded, and pointed his Pokedex, which activated at each one he focused on. Sentret, the scout Pokemon. When Sentret sleeps, it does so while another stands guard. The sentry wakes the others at the first sign of danger. When this Pokemon becomes separated from its pack, it becomes incapable of sleep due to fear. Pidgey, the tiny bird Pokemon. Pidgey has an extremely sharp sense of direction. It is capable of unerringly returning home to its nest, however far it may be removed from its familiar surroundings. Lediba, the 5-star Pokemon. Lediba secretes an aromatic fluid from its leg joints. This fluid is used for communicating with others. This Pokemon conveys its feelings to others by altering the fluid's scent. Man, these dex entries on the Pokemon are very thorough, Kaboo complimented. All thanks to the research on Pokemon all throughout the world. Chris answered, I actually want to help learn more details on many Pokemon myself. But that's besides the point, right now. Why don't you start by targeting one of the Pokemon? Okay, Kaboo answered, looking at each of them. He wasn't sure which one to capture at first. However, something in the books he read popped into his head. A great trainer has a diverse set of Pokemon with multiple types to cover all weaknesses. According to my Pokedex, Eevee's a normal type, Kaboo pondered to himself, looking to his partner next to him. It also says Sentret is also a normal type and is FF rank. Pidgey is a mixture of normal and flying type but same rank, and Lediba is a mixture of bug and flying type and is FF rank. Taking that into consideration, Eevee, go forth and use quick attack on Lediba. Kaboo told his partner. VV, she answered, going into a speedy dash through the forest and slamming into the ladybug, catching it off guard and sending it flying. The attack startled the other two Pokemon, and they raced or flew away from the danger. Kaboo and Chris caught up with Eevee as Lediba recovered and prepped itself, flying into the air above. There's no way to run or hide from me. Lediba, Kaboo called to it. Ledi, it responded, before unleashing a sound wave from its mouth, hitting Eevee with it, causing her to be weakened by the attack. What kind of sound is this? Kaboo asked, surprised by the unexpected attack. Lediba must be using supersonic. Chris realized, her eyes widening. When Lediba stopped its attack, Eevee started to hobble from side to side. Spirals in her eyes from the dizziness. A supersonic causes confusion on a Pokemon, Chris explained quickly. Confuse them, Kaboo echoed, a new concept. Yeah, there are all kinds of moves that can cause status afflictions to a Pokemon, Chris explained. They can cause paralysis, burns, poison, sleepiness, or in this case, confusion. Eevee was still in a state of confusion as Lediba flew down at it. Its 6 legs glowing, before unleashing a super-fast barrage of punches on Eevee. Now it's using Comet Punch. Chris exclaimed, Eevee, get away from distance and use Swift. Kaboo called out. Eevee was knocked back, but she tried to use Swift. Unfortunately, she ended up spinning in a circle and fell to the ground, too dizzy to make a move. Damn it, she can't do anything in this state. At this point, she's gonna get hurt even worse. Kaboo growled, seeing Lediba back off, circle around, and come in with another Comet Punch. Kaboo's Saiyan instincts kicked in, defending his defenseless companion. Fight someone your own size, bug. Kaboo responded. He charged his ki, teleported in front of Eevee, and delivered a powerful roundhouse kick that hit Lediba, causing great pain and sending it flying backward, falling to the ground hard. Why did you do that? Chris questioned him incredulously, her jaw dropping. You weren't supposed to fight in your Pokemon's stead like that. It was a reflex, okay. I always try to protect those who can't protect themselves. I hate it when someone picks on the weak just for fun, Kaboo answered, dispersing his ki aura. Besides, is there any rule that says a trainer can't step into a Pokemon battle? Well, no, but no one in this world has crazy skills and abilities in fighting like you do. Chris argued, frustrated. Besides, why didn't you just try to help Eevee snap out of her confusion? You could have done that and trusted her to finish the fight. I don't know, Kaboo answered, looking down at Eevee, who had come out of her confusion and looked up at him with worry. Honestly, it was a hard habit to get used to, especially since he was now in a new universe with a new set of rules to go by. He hated following those rules. Sometimes you have to break those rules with hard choices and what needs to be done. Still, he knew he still had to follow them at least, even if it meant breaking some of them. It doesn't matter now, I did end up beating Lediba, anyway. Kaboo decided to divert the subject, looking to the beaten Lediba. So, how do I capture it again? Chris was a bit hesitant to divert the subject. She was aware Kaboo was different and wanted to protect his Pokemon, but he could still overkill things. She sighed as she answered, in order to capture a wild Pokemon, pull out an empty Pokeball, click the button to expand it. and toss it at the Pokemon. Okay, Kaboo answered, grabbing one of the small Pokeballs he got from Elm, tapping the button, expanding it to the size of a baseball, and throwing it at Ladybug. It hit the bug hard, bounced off, opened up, and red energy sucked it into the ball. It closed up when it went inside and fell to the ground. Is it caught yet? Kaboo asked, about to approach it. Hold on. Chris stopped him, pointing to the ball as it started to shake about. See it shaking? That means it's trying to free itself. Kaboo and Chris watched as the Pokeball continued to shake for a while. Before finally stopping, and with a click and a sparkle from it, it stopped. Is it safe now? Kaboo asked. Yep, you caught Ladybug, Chris answered. Go grab it. Kaboo wandered over and picked up the ball. Examining it, you should probably take it with me to the Pokemon Center to heal up. That attack you did to it did some pretty strong damage. Yeah, probably I overkilled my strength. Sorry about that, Kaboo apologized, looking to Eevee. Should I heal her up at the center, too? You should. She did take a beating from our battle and the one with Ladybug. Then let's head back to New Bark Town. Kaboo decided for the best, and the two wandered back the way they came. About an hour later, Kaboo and Chris were waiting patiently in the clean, brightly lit lobby of the Pokemon Center for their Pokemon to be healed by Nurse Joy, the kind woman who ran the place. As they waited, Chris took the opportunity to give Kaboo a rundown of some things he should be aware of before they parted ways. It was rather helpful advice, mostly a recap of things he'd already learned, but with a few extra nuances about trainer etiquette and journey essentials. You really are smart about all of this for your age. Kaboo acknowledged, genuinely impressed. Are all trainers like you, or just you? No, not at all, Chris answered with a modest shrug. I just researched a lot. A couple of years before becoming a trainer. I still gotta use all those lessons now that I've started my journey. Still, you were a great teacher for me. Without you, I'd probably be in trouble for sure, Kaboo pointed out. A rare hint of vulnerability in his voice. Thanks so much for helping me. It's no problem, Chris replied, a warm smile on her face. She then looked seriously at him. Still, it would be a good idea not to do anything that would show off that you are from another universe or even hint at your origins. I gave you the basic instructions, but I have a feeling it will still be difficult for you. I know, Kaboo stated, looking upwards at the ceiling, a distant look in his eyes. This isn't the first universe I've traveled to. Of course, that was a complete accident. T ended up being sent to a universe in the first place. This time, I intentionally left my universe. After a moment's pause, Chris asked, her curiosity getting the better of her, what was the other universe like? The one you accidentally went to? Pretty simple, actually. No Pokemon, time patrollers, or anything like that. Nothing but normal Earthlings there, Kaboo answered, a faint smile touching his lips as he recalled the memory. Except I ended up taking part in this dojo with incredible martial artists. It was there I actually trained to hone my combat skills, both in key training and martial arts. Those masters, especially the Grand Master, were the real monsters of that world, while I was a demon of the universe. Is that so? Chris asked with a sweat-dropped expression, trying to imagine a world without Pokemon. Yeah, but I made some good friends there and even had my own students at the same time, Kaboo answered. There was even this one boy who arrived at the dojo as I did. And get this, he was also from another universe, too. Not even from my universe. Wait. He paused, his eyes widening as a crucial piece of information clicked into place. He thought back to the boy. The one mostly in black clothes when he first met him. A human who had abilities similar to telekinesis, and who told him a lot about his universe. Kaboo, Chris spoke up, trying to get his attention, concerned by his sudden stillness. Holy hell, I freaking knew I heard about Pokemon before. Kaboo exclaimed, standing up abruptly, his sudden movement startling Chris. Huh, what? Chris looked pretty confused. Back then, 7 years ago. The boy I just mentioned. He said that he was from another universe, and it was the world of Pokemon. Kaboo remembered, the pieces of the puzzle finally fitting together. He even said he was experimented on to use Pokemon moves too. Whoa, hold on. Chris stopped him, holding up her hands. A human that can use attacks like a Pokemon. That's even more bizarre than your story. Hey, he said it, I didn't. Kaboo argued, though a slight grin betrayed his amusement. But that kid, I remember his name. Seth Muto. I think he said he hailed from a region called Kalos. That's the region where my Pokedex is from, right? Yeah, it is, Chris answered, still bewildered by the revelation. Are you thinking about finding him, if he is even from this world? Kaboo paused, thinking about it. He closed his eyes for a moment, weighing his options. No, not right now. First, I need to find my grounding here. Then, when I am a lot more experienced, and stronger no matter what it takes. Then maybe I'll go look for him. But knowing him, he's probably alright right now. Just then, they heard the familiar chime over the speakers, and saw Nurse Joy appear out of the back room, pushing a trolley. On it sat Totodile, Eevee, and Ladybug, all looking refreshed and energetic. Beside the trolley walked an egg-shaped creature with an egg in its pouch and a nurse hat on its head, a Chansey. Kaboo and Chris recognized the Pokemon and went over to them. Thank you for your patience, Joy told them with a kind smile. Your Pokemon have been fully restored. Chansey, the egg-shaped Pokemon added cheerfully. Thanks so much, Nurse Joy, Chris thanked her, taking her Totodile, while Kaboo nodded to her as thanks. Kaboo's Eevee bounded off the trolley and rubbed against her trainer's leg, causing him to smile. Ladybug flew over in front of Kaboo, its antennae twitching. Kaboo looked at it, a hint of awkwardness returning. I know our meeting was a bit overkill, but still. I hope you don't mind having me as a trainer. I am rather new to all of this. Lee-dee-dee, Ladybug cheerfully responded, fluttering its wings, signaling its acceptance for Kaboo. Kaboo then turned to Joy and asked, so, how much do I need to pay for the center bill? Joy looked surprised, and her expression made the adult Saiyan confused. Forgive him, Chris apologized quickly, pulling Kaboo closer to her. He's still kind of new to a lot of things on Pokemon journeys. She then turned to the confused adult Saiyan and informed him, Kaboo, Pokemon centers take care of your Pokemon free of charge. There is no fee for their service. For real? Kaboo asked, amazed. His mind immediately went into overdrive. In that case, how do they get the finances for their tech and supplies? Is there a government-supported system? Is there even a government at this point? What the hell? Kaboo had so many questions on his mind, and the two girls were starting to see a faint wisp of smoke come off of his head. As if his brain was about to explode from the sheer illogicality of it all. You're overthinking way too much on this, Chris sighed, shaking his shoulder gently to snap him out of his thoughts. Let's just go before you embarrass us further. She tugged him by his vest, and he was escorted out of the center, with their Pokemon in tow. They arrived back at the entrance of New Bark Town. The morning sun now higher in the sky. Chris let out a sigh, a mix of exasperation and concern. Honestly, your otherworldly thoughts were really on show there. I'm worried about letting you go on your own, Kaboo. No, I can take care of myself, Kaboo apologized, a slight blush on his cheeks. I'll try my hardest not to think too hard on those kinds of things. I was just shocked at that. That's the point, Chris argued, then lifted the pink device on the end of her pendant. Listen, if you want to go on your own, you should at least have my Pokénov number on you, so you and I can contact each other. I'll even add Ethan and Elm's numbers to you, as well. So that's the device you use to contact each other? Kaboo asked, intrigued. Sure, that's no problem. When I placed in my information into Elm's computer yesterday, I was able to create a phone number for my phone. We can share numbers. I can't figure out whether to feel amazed at your skills, or embarrassed by the lack of common sense you have in this universe. Chris muttered, shaking her head. Oh, come on, give me some slack, okay. I'm still learning, Kaboo argued, a playful glint in his eye. Once they cooled off, Kaboo was able to obtain the 3 Pokénov numbers onto his phone, while he shared his new number with Chris. I'll be sure to share the number with Elm and Ethan, when I can, she assured him. They turned off their devices as they looked to the path ahead. I can finally start my journey, Chris stated, a renewed sense of excitement in her voice. Yeah, same thing, Kaboo added, looking to her. I can't thank you enough for all your help. I'll do my best to take everything to heart, and not let my other universe common sense get in the way, but I can't promise anything. You'd better hope so, Chris answered, a playful warning in her tone. I hope we see each other again. Kaboo nodded in agreement, and Chris wandered down the road, with Totodile, who was on the sidelines with Eevee and Ladybug, racing after her. Kaboo looked to his 2 Pokemon, who came over to his side. Guess this is it, he told them. Our journey begins. Leedy, the 2 cheerfully responded, looking up at him with eager eyes. Man, it would be nice if I understood what they were saying, Kaboo thought to himself. Right, I'll come up with something when I can. Maybe I can ask Bulma or the Supreme Kai of Time to give me a hand. He then pulled out his Pokemon's Pokeballs and said, I'm gonna go fast for a while, so you guys'll probably need to go back into your balls. With the red energy of the balls, the Y were called back within their capsules, and Kaboo placed them away securely. Okay, according to the map, I need to go down Route 29, then go north up Route 46 and 45 to make it to Blackthorn City. Riss said the terrain is rough for newcomers, as are the trainers, but he began to hover off the ground, a faint golden aura shimmering around him. Not many trainers are as skilled, fast, or as powerful key users as me. Though to be fair, and to get used to my new environment, I'll only take 5 or 3 minute spurts, and take the moments in between to understand this universe. Alright, before I draw attention to myself, let's escape from this city. He shot off like a hyperspeed bullet, his ki rising and his speed accelerating him along the path and into the skies. He easily zoomed past Chris, who braced herself as a powerful gust of wind from his passing slammed into her. She only loosened up when the winds died down, and she looked up to see him vanish into the distance in the sky. Quote, "This adventure is already gonna turn out to be a bizarre one with him starting it, too," she murmured, before smiling and moving on. At this point, Ethan had just left the Pokemon Center in the town called Cherry Grove City. Ready to continue his own journey. Kaboo was zooming along the path, a blur against the landscape. Chris was casually walking along, away from town, her own adventure just truly beginning. Meanwhile, in a small, secluded patch within the forest, a fourth figure stood. His image was blocked by the harsh sunlight, but his silhouette was distinct, a teenager with spiky, crimson hair, a cocky smirk, and a penguin-like Pokemon standing defiantly beside him. In front of him, a scared green creature with a leaf protruding from its head trembled the stolen Chikorita. They were not alone. Beside them appeared 3 shadowy figures, one a teenager boy with black hair and an orange bandana around his neck, exuding a confident, almost cocky attitude, another, a teenage girl with blonde hair and a perpetually deadpanned look, and finally, a tall adult man with striking red-orange mohawk hair and an emotionless, calm face. Unseen by them all, Tawa observed from a swirling demon crystal ball, meticulously studying the Pokemon of this world. Beside her, Mira trained relentlessly, fighting various Pokemon from different regions, easily defeating them. He would then collect the defeated Pokemon, bringing them back to Tawa for future experiments. They had grand ambitions for this timeline and a burning desire for revenge against Saiyans, not just because Demigra was defeated, but because their own timeline's variation was destroyed by time patrollers, and Goku had intervened. The story focused on the Saiyan named Kaboo, a time patroller, and the 3 other trainers, along with these new interlopers. As a great event began to take place in the Johto region. In the rocky terrain of the uphill route, Kaboo had just stopped and landed to take a break, bringing out his Pokemon in the process. He had chosen a hidden spot, obscured by a cluster of large boulders, as he looked out to see a group of what looked like living rocks with faces and 2 arms hopping along the ground in a straight line, seemingly heading towards a destination. Kaboo pulled out his Pokédex and examined the Pokemon from a distance. Geodude, the rock Pokemon. The longer a Geodude lives, the more its edges are chipped and worn away, making it more rounded in appearance. However, this Pokemon's heart will remain hard, craggy, and rough always. Living rocks. Well, there's something I don't see in my home universe. But then I see other different elements that are harder and tougher than they look, Kaboo muttered, observing their slow, deliberate movements. He sensed their energy, they were higher D rank. A noticeable step up from the wild Pokemon he'd seen around New Bark Town. He continued to examine the decks as he noted, seems like they're a rock and ground type Pokemon. From what I know, all my Pokemon have normal type moves, which are ineffective against them. In other words, my Pokemon are out of their league against them. He looked back at both Eevee and Lediba, both of Y.Ch had questionable expressions on their faces, as if sensing his assessment. Best leave them alone, he finished, deciding to move to a different area. In order for Kaboo to truly rely on his Pokemon, as Chris had instructed, he decided to go and search for opponents to fight against with the same or lower level rank. He had planned to get more Pokemon as he did so, but decided to focus on the 2 he had on his person for now. He felt like he needed to at least get used to being an actual Pokemon trainer, so he should at least be comfortable with the Pokemon he had before getting more. Rock types are definitely out of the question, Kaboo muttered, looking around, seeing the predominantly rocky environment of Route 46. Maybe something a little easier to take on. Let's see what we can find. He and his two Pokemon suddenly heard rustling nearby and turned to see one of the bushes nearby shake about, before what looked like a small, blue elephant-like creature emerged. "Now, who is this little fellow?" Kaboo asked, pulling out his dex again. Phanpy, the long-nosed Pokemon. For its nest, Phanpy digs a vertical pit in the ground at the edge of a river. It marks the area around its nest with its trunk to let the others know that the area has been claimed. It's only a ground type, so it's a good matchup for us. Heck, this guy is lower FF rank, Kaboo stated, turning to his team. Let's fight against it. Leedy, Eevee and Ledyba answered, their cries filled with determination to show their worth. Alright, Eevee, go in with a quick attack. Kaboo ordered, and Eevee shot forward, striking Phanpy as it looked up, sending it tumbling backward. Hell yeah, Kaboo responded, a grin spreading across his face. Phanpy shook itself off, letting out a determined trumpet, and charged at Eevee with a tackle attack. Predictable, I can see that from a mile away. Now, Eevee, use sand attack. Kaboo shouted. She responded by kicking sand in Phanpy's face, who got blinded as it charged, giving Eevee the chance to avoid the attack. We got him on the ropes, now, Kaboo stated, punching his hand, feeling the familiar thrill of combat. Let's keep it up, until we win. Eevee, hit it with another quick attack. Kaboo called out, his voice sharp with determination. Eevee charged in with another fast strike toward the dazed Phanpy. However, the Phanpy's nose suddenly glowed as it sniffed about, before turning its head with surprising accuracy in Eevee's direction. It sniffed her out, that means it can use other senses. Kaboo realized, a flash of surprise on his face. He then saw the Phanpy curl up into a protective ball just as Eevee hit it, taking the attack and being pushed away. It uncurled itself, appearing to have taken less damage than before. This Pokemon is pretty good, Kaboo muttered to himself. A genuine respect for his opponent growing. Time to take this seriously. Ledyba, go in and block his senses with Supersonic. Ledyba charged in and unleashed a sonic wave that struck Phanpy, causing it to become confused. Now, attack it with Comet Punch. Kaboo shouted, and Ledyba shot in, delivering a quick barrage of punches to the dazed elephant. It was pummeled, but still not down. This thing is as enduring as a boulder, Kaboo muttered, a bead of sweat forming on his brow. He quickly thought, wait, since physical attacks aren't going to work, then maybe a special one will do the trick. Eevee, swift, Ledyba backed off as Eevee shot in, and with a swing of its tail, sent a volley of stars spewing out at Phanpy. This attack certainly did a lot of damage, and Phanpy was sent flying as a result. It skidded on its side before getting spirals in its eyes, knocked out cold. Way to go, you guys. Kaboo cheered, his arms raised in triumph. You certainly knew how to take it down. Sure, if you were just being unfair in a 2-against-1 fight, called out a female voice from nearby. Kaboo turned and saw a young lady step out onto the trail. She wore a red-orange cap and vest over a black long-sleeve shirt, black cargo pants, red boots, and gloves. She had a rope attached to her belt and several Pokeballs on her other side. Is there a rule saying that I should only use one Pokemon in wild battles? Kaboo asked, his brow furrowed. If that's the case, I don't remember reading about that. And what's more, I didn't attack both at once, I only used one at a time. True, but it doesn't seem like you were planning to capture that Pokemon, the woman stated, walking over to the Phanpy and crouching down. She dug into her cargo pants pocket, pulling out a potion spray and squirting it on the wounds dealt to it during the battle. Are you a new Pokemon trainer? You look more adult than I'm used to seeing. Yeah, what about it? Kaboo asked defensively. Usually, when a trainer fights a Pokemon, it's because they were defending themselves from an aggressive Pokemon or they planned to capture it, she explained, seeing the Phanpy recover and open its eyes to her. Then stand up and shake itself off. I saw from a distance that it didn't attack you, and you didn't look like you were going to capture it. It's not okay in my book if you are just fighting for the sake of it. Look, all I did was train, Kaboo explained, his frustration rising. What is her deal anyway? It's like she has some weird politician issues. I was just training my Pokemon to get stronger. And she appears out of nowhere and judges my method. This kid has almost no sense of respect, he thought to himself. Who are you, anyway, and what's your business here? She stood up straight as she turned to him, a serious expression on her face. The name's Madeline, I'm a Pokemon Ranger, and my business is that I go around rescuing and taking care of wild Pokemon around here. Then, my name is Kaboo. These are my two Pokemon, he said, gesturing to both Eevee and Ledyba. I was just trying to figure out a way to train them in order to rely on them. Rely on them? That's a weird way of saying that. Madeline replied, before looking closely at Kabu's physique. And you seem really adult. Could you be a Pokemon hunter? You aren't planning to attack Pokemon, are you? That is extremely not okay in my book. What in the hell? Why would I do that? And I'm not a hunter, either, you idiot. Kabu argued, his eyes flaring slightly. Okay, what is wrong with her? I've been in this universe for almost 2 days, and now she's accusing me of being a thug. She's got some nerve. I almost wish I could wipe the floor with her for the disrespect, well, almost. She's not even worth my time. He managed to keep his inner monologue from escaping. Look, I was just a late bloomer and I trained in martial arts. I've never even studied anything about Pokemon or being a trainer until recently. This was the story he had come up with while flying towards the route earlier. He decided that if he were to constantly explain that he was from another universe, things would get out of hand. And he definitely couldn't reveal his Saiyan species. Instead, he decided on this story for when people asked about his appearance, as well as his lack of knowledge on Pokemon. That sounds oddly suspicious, Madeline stated, narrowing her eyes at him. But I shouldn't pressure you. Just be sure not to hurt or abuse any Pokemon. Hunters, in general, are the kind who hunt Poc. Aim on for the highest bidder and sell them. I understand, and trust me, I'm not one of those guys. That's not my style, Kabu replied as he and the ranger watched Phanpy wander away from the scene, happy to have been helped. In any case, where are you heading to? Madeline asked. Blackthorn City, Kabu answered. I plan to take on the gym there. That's a pretty gutsy move if you are planning to take on Claire while you are still so new to being a trainer. Claire, Kabu echoed. Yeah, she's the gym leader there, Madeline explained. She is a very strong trainer, and one whose main goal is to become a Dragon Master. Much like her cousin, Lance. Dragon Master, Kabu echoed, surprised to hear the title, before remembering something. According to the books he had read, there was a dragon-type class of Pokemon out there. And they were said to be quite rare and incredibly powerful. Well, I guess that gives me one more reason to train my Pokemon hard in order to take her on, Kabu told himself after hearing about the gym leader, feeling more excited and his blood firing up at the thought of battling such powerful Pokemon. For now, he just needed to train his Pokemon to be strong enough to challenge her. Then why don't you challenge your Pokemon against mine? Madeline asked, pulling out a Pokeball and clicking it to expand it. Wait, you want to challenge me? Kabu asked, surprised by the sudden shift from accusation to challenge. Sure, trainer battles are a tradition, she explained. Besides, it's customary for trainers to battle each other if they lock eyes with one another. That's a thing, Kabu questioned, finding the custom bizarre but intriguing. Well, sure, sounds fun. Let's get started. Moments later, the two stood a fair distance apart, with Kabu's Eevee and Lediba on his side. While the Pokemon Ranger readied herself. Let's make this a 2-on-2 single battle, she suggested. That's when each of us uses 2 Pokemon each for a 1-on-1 battle. I'll go easy on you. Since you're new, by using my 2 weaker Pokemon. Don't underestimate me just because I'm a rookie, Kabu stated, his confidence unwavering. Give everything you've got, don't hold back. Then I'll start with this Pokemon. Go, Sentret, she called out, tossing a ball. Out came the raccoon-tailed creature Kabu had encountered before, calling out as it readied to fight. In that case, I choose Lediba. Kabu called out, waving a hand forward as Lediba flew in, ready to battle. Come on, make your first move. I dare you, and see what happens next. Well, someone's overconfident and a bit too cocky, Madeline noted with a smirk. But that can be either foolish or a great strength, depending on how you look at it. Sentret, use Fury Swipes. Sentret used its tail to push itself into the air, its tiny paws producing claws. Dodge his attack, get behind it, and use Comet Punch on its back. Kabu called out, and his Lediba flew in with glowing fists. Lediba easily do. DGED Sentret's move and attacked from behind, delivering a quick hit that dealt a bit of damage before Lediba fell to the ground. Impressive. Lediba has some pretty good skills to combat my Sentret's claws, Madeline praised. Lediba likes using its fists in battle, just like I do, Kabu answered, a proud smile on his face. Now's your chance, go in for a tackle. His Ladybug Pokemon flew at Sentret with a full-body blow. Counter with Defense Curl, Madeline responded. Sentret curled up into a ball, and took the attack, rolling backward. It unveiled itself, revealing it had endured the attack. So that was the move Phanpy used before. Defense curl, right, Kaboo understood, making a mental note of the new move. Yep, it's a great way to build up your defenses against attacks, Madeline stated. Now for a counterattack. Use quick attack. Sentret shot forward at high speeds, a blur of motion just like Eevee. Fly up, Kaboo responded, and Lediba flew into the air, only for Sentret to push itself up by its tail. And strike it head on, forcing it to fall from the sky and hit the ground hard. Damn it, I couldn't evade that fast attack. Kaboo grimaced. Now, go in for fury swipes. Madeline shouted, and Sentret readied its claws at Lediba. Here's your chance, use Supersonic. Kaboo called out. His Pokémon responded with a point-blank sonic wave that hit Sentret, causing it to go into a confused state. It ended up swiping wildly, only hitting Lediba on the back once before stumbling. Tackle it back, Kaboo called out, and his partner sent the normal type tumbling hard with the attack. Sentret tumbled along the ground until it collapsed on its back, with spirals in its eyes. Looks like my Sentret cannot battle any longer, Madeline stated, calling back her partner to its Pokeball. Clever trick on using Supersonic at the right time. You're pretty good at this. To be honest, I was worried at first, Kaboo admitted, running a hand through his hair. But now, it seems YBA was able to respond quickly to my calls. True, you were pretty good there, the ranger admitted, pulling out another Pokeball to replace her other one. But what about dealing with this? Go, Ponyta, she called out, and tossed the ball. A Pokémon that looked like a cream-colored horse with black eyes and hooves emerged, and the mane on its back was made of red flames. Now that's what I call firepower, alright. Kaboo commented, digging out his dex and examining the Pokémon. Ponyta, the fire horse Pokémon. Ponyta is very weak at birth. It can barely stand up. This Pokémon becomes stronger by stumbling and falling to keep up with its parent. It's a fire type, in other words, it's a bad matchup for Lediba. He's at a disadvantage, Kaboo noted, putting away the Pokédex. Judging by this Ponyta's energy, I'd say it's around lower D rank. For something so small, it can be a strong fire Pokémon, Kaboo thought to himself, a new sense of excitement building inside him. The challenge was getting tougher. This Ponyta was one I actually rescued recently, Madeline explained, a fond look on her face. She's become pretty attached to me and has been wanting to help out with my ranger business. Yet another reason for Pokémon to help people out with their duties, Kaboo noted, a hint of genuine interest in his voice. It's pretty handy to have them around, huh? Ledi, Kaboo heard his partner call to him, and saw Lediba turn to him before producing what looked like a translucent window out of thin air, with a slight rainbow sheen to it. What the? Kaboo gasped. What is this? It seems like the previous battle helped Lediba learn Reflect, Madeline recognized, impressed. Well done to your partner. Reflect. That's new, Kaboo echoed, pulling out his Pokédex again and examining the move. A move that creates a defensive wall for a period of time. There is even another move here that Lediba learned called Light Screen, which does the same, but endures special attacks. But wait a second, Kaboo looked at the move list and noticed, what happened to Tackle? Pokémon are only able to learn 4 moves at a time, Madeline explained patiently. So if Lediba learned a 5th move, it replaced one of its old moves for a new one. Well, that's pretty stupid, Kaboo stated flatly. I mean seriously, isn't Tackle just a body blow of some kind? How can that be forgotten, just like that? Hey, that's just how Pokémon are. I don't know the logic, Madeline shrugged it off with a slight chuckle. Let's get back to the battle, alright. Sure, let's get this over with, Kaboo answered. His mind still trying to process the concept. Go in with a supersonic. At his call, Lediba unleashed a sonic wave at Ponyta. Dodge it, Madeline responded, and Ponyta gracefully galloped around the attack. Charging at Lediba. Use Ember. The flaming horse unleashed small fireballs from its mouth at Lediba. Dodge it, Kaboo called out, and Lediba panicked as it tried to avoid the attack. Only to end up getting blasted by a fireball. We got it now, Madeline noted. Use Flame Wheel. Ponyta galloped forward, and with a swish of its flaming mane, ended up turning into a flaming wheel. Coming straight for Lediba. This crazy attack surprised Kaboo, but he had to act fast. Lediba looked too injured to avoid it, so he had to rely on his newest move. Lediba, set up Reflect. Kaboo called out. Lediba's eyes glowed, summoning an invisible barrier before it. Ponyta made contact, and there was a flaming explosion, before Lediba was sent backwards, hitting the ground in front of Kaboo with spirals in its eyes. Looks like that's it for Lediba, Madeline stated as Kaboo quickly used his Pokeball to return his injured partner. Well, that's pretty disappointing. This move is useless, Kaboo sighed. Putting away the ball. Don't be too sure of yourself, Madeline warned him, a small, knowing smile on her face. What do you mean by that? Kaboo questioned her, confused. You'll find out in our last battle. Madeline responded. Now, call out your final Pokemon. All right, Kaboo responded, still confused by her words. Eevee, let's give it our best shot. Eevee leapt forward, ready to fight. A determined look on her face. Let's not waste any time. Use Flame Wheel. Ponyta charged forward, turning into another flaming wheel. Use Sand Attack. Kaboo responded, and Eevee kicked up sand with her hind legs, reaching Ponyta from a distance. But the fire type was still charging, and Kaboo and Eevee panicked as the attack made contact. However, they soon noticed something that surprised them more. The reflect barrier had appeared again, reducing the attack's damage. As that reflect, Kaboo gasped. Did Eevee learn reflect, too? Reflect can sustain for a while. Even if you switch out Pokemon, Madeline explained, gesturing to the shimmering barrier. That makes more sense, Kaboo stated, the new information clicking into place. Guess we should thank Lediba for this if we win this fight. Eevee chirped in response to this, as Kaboo called out, now use Quick Attack. Eevee shot quickly at Ponyta, striking it on the side. One more time, Kaboo called out, and Eevee pivoted around and ran in pursuit of Ponyta. The area became a race track, with Ponyta trying to outrun the small fox creature in a quick attack. Outpace her, Ponyta, Madeline called out, and Ponyta ran fast to evade Eevee's attack. You are my Pokemon, and I know you are faster than this. Kaboo called out, his voice a shout of pure encouragement. You can go with everything you've got. And you will break the speed limit of sound. You got this, do it, Eevee. Eevee heard her master's call and felt the strength in his words. Somehow, she went faster to catch up and be at the same pace as the long-legged Ponyta. Then, everything around her froze. Time stopped in her mind. Eevee was confused. Why had everything stopped moving? Her master, his opponent, the ranger, they were not moving at all. Eevee couldn't even move herself. Everything around her was stuck in a loop until another Eevee appeared in front of her. She couldn't see her face, but her shock was immense. That Eevee, instead of being on 4 legs, stood on 2, straight up. Her arms had a bit of muscle, as did her legs. Her hands were like paws, but with 4 claw-like fingers. Her eyes were a primary yellow, and she was cross-armed. Glaring at Eevee with full judgment. Eevee was lost for words, but for some reason, the figure looked familiar somehow. The doppelganger spoke words she wouldn't forget. It has been a while, hasn't it? Sister, there is so much I want to tell you since the moment you were born, and I really want to use your body as a test drive and show our Saiyan master what we're made of. But it seems you're winning against a weakened Pokemon. That's a shame, but don't worry, I can wait. Time is a relevant concept. But when our time comes, I'll make sure it's a good fight you won't forget. And before I forget, finish what you started and finish that poke runt, will you, sister? The doppelganger Eevee just smirked, a grim, devious expression on her face. Before Eevee could even ask, she was back in reality. Time resumed normally, and the fight continued. Madeline was shocked and impressed by Eevee's sudden burst of speed, but she didn't have time to react as Eevee had just made a powerful leap and knocked Ponyta over. Way to go, Eevee! Kaboo cheered, while Eevee was panting from the running and still confused in her mind. We can't let up. Use Ember, Madeline called out. Use Swift, and don't hold back, Kaboo responded. Both Pokemon unleashed their long-ranged attacks at each other, but Eevee's stars overpowered Ember, thanks to her adaptability and the residual reflect barrier. And pummeled Ponyta while it was down. Ponyta was knocked out, unable to continue. Looks like we win, Kaboo cheered, running over to his partner. Nice going, Eevee, you're amazing. He noticed the evolution Pokemon was stumbling a bit before collapsing from exhaustion. He went over to her and picked her up, asking, you okay, buddy? Guess I kinda pushed you too much when you were running. Don't worry, in time we'll fix it. Madeline walked over to her Ponyta, who was beginning to regain consciousness. You did a great job, Ponyta. Rest up for now, she said, raising its head. Ponyta nodded and was called back to its Pokeball. She then walked over to Kaboo, who was holding his exhausted Eevee. I guess you bested me this time around. Well done, Kaboo, she said, a hint of admiration in her voice. Thanks, It was a great fight, Kaboo replied. But can you come here a little closer? I've got something just for you. Madeline stepped closer to him, a confused look on her face. Before she could react, Kaboo lightly hit her on the head with his free hand. Ow, what was that for? Madeline exclaimed, holding the spot on her head. That's for accusing me of being a thug, you idiot. Next time, ask first before you judge someone by their cover. Kaboo responded. He'd apparently been holding a grudge and felt good to finally release his frustration. Okay, I get it. You don't have to hit my head. You jerk, Madeline replied, a small smile creeping onto her face despite the sting. Minutes later, with the sun beginning to set, the two had pitched their camping supplies to rest up and feed their Pokémon. The 4 Pokémon that had just fought each other were now enjoying their meal together. Kaboo, meanwhile, was cooking food for himself and Madeline, and she watched in shock as he ate over 10 plates, an amount that would be impossible for any normal person. Kaboo got to cook up some food for himself and Madeline, the two sitting together as they ate. It'll be too dangerous to go out at night like this, so it's best to rest up for tonight, Madeline told Kaboo. Thank you for the meal, by the way. Hey, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Kaboo answered. Believe it or not, back home, I ended up doing a lot of cooking for my friends. I had to, because one of them had horrible cooking skills, so I learned how to cook when I wasn't when I was training like crazy with my martial arts. You are a rather interesting individual, the ranger stated, her curiosity piqued. I never saw a trainer like you before. You say you were sheltered, but why? Oh, you clearly have skills as a trainer most newcomers don't have. I studied sometimes, Kaboo answered evasively. This wasn't a lie, as he had studied some books on Pokémon, and he was still reading right now. He also applied all of his martial arts and key training lessons from his home universe. If you say so, Madeline replied, before gasping. Oh, yeah, I should bring out my ace partner to join us. She dug into her pocket and pulled out a Pokeball that was different from the standard red and white ones, this one was yellow with a red stripe. She tossed it up, and out popped a Pokémon that took Kaboo by surprise. It was a large, rocky-looking, 2-legged Pokémon. It was a mixture of gray and brown with light brown boulders for what looked like armor, 2 horns on its head, a heavy-looking tail, blade-like protrusions from its arms which had holes in the palms, and stubby feet. What the heck, I've never seen any Pokémon this size before. Kaboo exclaimed, his voice full of shock. This is my best partner, Rhyperior. Madeline introduced her partner, who let out a mighty roar in response. Kaboo dug into his pocket to pull out the Pokédex, raising it to the monstrosity. Rhyperior, the drill Pokémon, and the evolved form of Rhydon. It puts rocks in the holes in its palms and uses its muscles to shoot them. Geodude are shot at rare times. Its carapace can withstand volcanic eruptions. Holy Kami, Kaboo muttered, looking up at Rhyperior as Madeline got some Pokémon food for it, giving the big bowl over to it. That is one heck of a Pokémon you've got. In rocky regions like this, Rhyperior has become my best friend and my best ally when it comes to doing my ranger duties, Madeline explained, patting the horn on its head as it ate. It's thanks to him that I chose to become a ranger. After he saved me from a rockslide when I was a child. Of course, he was a Rhyhorn back then. So he is your hero? Kaboo asked, a sincere look on his face. Yep, though there have been times where I've come to his rescue. Too, she explained. The two of us have had our fair share of ordeals, but that built the trust we have upon one another to help save Pokémon and people. You've developed a trust with one another. Huh, Kaboo questioned, looking to Eevee and Lediba. Do you trust your Pokémon? Madeline asked softly. I want to, but well, I am having trust issues with a lot of things nowadays, Kaboo answered. Looking up at the stars. I went through a hell of a lot before I started this journey. Oh, I'm sorry I asked, the young woman apologized, seeing his troubled expression and feeling bad for him. But listen, there will come a time where you have to trust them. That way, you can overcome all sorts of obstacles. They will trust in me? Kaboo asked, his voice quiet. Yeah, you are their trainer, and that means you have a responsibility to help them overcome ordeals together, she said, patting Kaboo's shoulder. You are still new to this, but you will learn. Yeah, I'll think about it, Kaboo responded, standing up before walking over to his tent. I'm calling it a night. I'll probably leave early in the morning to make my way to Blackthorn. Madeline felt like she had touched on a subject that was hard for Kaboo, and decided not to pursue it. Instead, she said, yeah, Good night. Eevee and Leddyba had finished their meals and saw Kaboo enter the tent. They looked at each other, and without a word, decided to join him, leaving Madeline and her Pokémon alone. The young lady heard the shuffling in his tent as he readied for bed. Looking over at Rhyperior, as Sentret and Ponyta joined them, she said, I really hope he creates a strong bond with his Pokémon, as much as I have with you guys. The three Pokémon responded to her happily as she smiled sweetly at them. In the tent, Kaboo was resting with his eyes open, as Leddyba was near his feet, while Eevee was right by his head, curled up and asleep. He couldn't help but think about Madeline's words, and about trusting his Pokémon. Just like they would trust him. On both ends, he was struggling. It was due to the turmoil of his past that caused him to lose his trust and become traumatized by his death and rebirth. This was something he had to learn, and soon. As he closed his eyes and fell asleep, he was once again greeted by nightmares of his past, and he could even hear Demigris laugh. As he struggled, Eevee and Leddyba were woken by his grimaces. The two looked at each other, worried, before looking at Kaboo. They rested themselves close to Kaboo's heart, trying to comfort him. He had no idea that the two were already trusting him enough to want to help him as he slept. But Eevee still remembered her doppelganger's words. She couldn't shake the feeling that she knew her somehow, and why would she call Eevee sister? Was she a relative? What did she mean by controlling her body? Whatever it was, Eevee decided she shouldn't think too hard about it and went back to sleep. After that, Kaboo could feel the warmth and was able to sleep a little more peacefully than he had before, though not knowing the reason why that is, until the next morning. Blackthorn City, a quiet mountain retreat, according to its slogan. But for those who knew its secrets, it was anything but tranquil. The homes were built into the sheer face of the mountainside, creating a breathtaking and imposing cityscape that seemed to defy gravity. In the center, a small but bustling downtown area provided all the necessities for travelers and residents. The city's true claim to fame, however, was as the home of great dragon masters and the final gym in the Johto League, where the dragon-type gym leader resided. Kaboo arrived at the edge of town after a couple of days of intense training. The battle with Madeline had been a catalyst, pushing him to focus not just on fighting, but on the connection he had with his Pokémon. He had taken her words about trust to heart, even if he wouldn't admit it out loud. Over the past few days, his journey through the more rugged paths of Route 45 had been less about flying and more about walking, observing, and engaging. Through a mix of instinct, his Pokédex, and the lessons he'd been given by Madeline, he'd managed to get both Leddyba and Eevee into a rigorous training regimen. He had taught them some basic principles of ki control and physical conditioning, adapting the techniques he'd learned at Ryazanpake. Eevee and Leddyba now wore special wristbands and ankle weights, crafted from a surprisingly durable, flexible material he'd found on the route. Each weight was about 6 kilograms, meaning Eevee was carrying 24 kilograms and Leddyba was carrying a staggering 36 kilograms. At first, the weights had been a massive struggle. Eevee stumbled and fell, her legs wobbling as she tried to walk. But Kaboo, remembering his own rigorous training, had been patient. He showed her how to shift her center of gravity, how to use her core muscles to support the weight, and how to focus her will. He taught her to stand on her hind legs, using her tail for balance. It was a long, arduous process of trial and error, but Eevee, with her incredible adaptability and desire to impress her master, had finally managed it. She could now walk on 2 legs with a surprising amount of grace and power, her movements no longer hindered by the weights. Her paws, too, had developed an impressive dexterity, allowing her to grasp, hold, and even punch with a surprising amount of force. Leddyba, on the other hand, had to learn to fly with the weights. The 36 kilograms were a significant burden for the small, flying insect. Kaboo had to teach him how to generate a stronger lift, how to control his wing beats to counter the added mass, and how to use his ki to lighten the load for a short burst of speed. The results were astounding. Leddyba's speed was now triple what it was before, and his punches were delivered with bone-shattering force. Kaboo had also started teaching them basic ki manifestation techniques. They were still far from mastering it, but he could see a faint glow of energy around them when they focused. Eevee's ki aura was a gentle, brown light, warm and earthy. Leddyba's was a fiery red-white, crackling with energy. As their bodies grew stronger, their moves evolved. Eevee's tackle was now replaced by the dark-type move bite. But thanks to Kaboo's training, she could also perform powerful body blows without needing to know the move itself. Leddyba's light screen had been replaced with Mach Punch, a fast fighting type attack. With his newfound speed and power, Lediba's Mach Punch was a blur of motion, a flurry of fists that could overwhelm opponents. Kabu was immensely proud of their progress. His pride, which had been so shattered by his recent ordeals, was beginning to return. His trust in himself and his Pokémon was also growing, though it was still fragile. He still had a deep-seated distrust of others, a wound from his past that hadn't yet healed. He also learned that he had to be careful with his Pokémon's unique abilities. In a few skirmishes with other trainers along the way, some were shocked and amazed by Eevee standing on two legs. A few even trying to take a selfie or record a video, while others were simply jealous. So this is Blackthorn City, Kabu stated, looking around the tranquil yet imposing scenery. Looks quite peaceful here, even with all the talk of Dragon Masters. I kinda like it. I don't have time to be a tourist, though. He examined the tourist book in his hand, which detailed the gym and a place called the Dragon's Den, a sanctuary for dragon-type trainers. I came here to test my skills in the gym. Better start by making my way to the Pokémon Center, just in case. Wandering through town, he looked at the tourist guide, which highlighted all the local attractions, shops, specialty treats, and of course, the gym. He was almost there when he saw a familiar sign. He made it to the Pokémon Center and took his Pokéballs out. Excuse me, I'm here to drop off my Pokémon to recover. The nurse who arrived surprised Kabu. She looked exactly like Nurse Joy, the nurse he had met in New Bark Town just a few days ago. Her hair was a slightly different shade, but the face was identical. Thank you, I'll take good care of them for you, she replied with the same cheerful tone. Kabu began, handing his Pokeballs to her. What the hell, and why is she all the way out here? He thought, before asking, I'm curious. Are you the same Nurse Joy I met in New Bark Town? Oh, no, she's one of my sisters. Nurse Joy answered with a gentle smile. As a matter of fact, a lot of my sisters are Nurse Joys, working at Pokémon centers all across Johto. Here, she pulled out a small photo from her pocket, and Kabu was stunned. It was a picture of practically identical girls, all wearing the same uniform, with the only slight difference being the color of the Pokémon Center logo on their hats. That's good to know, Kabu muttered. A slight chill running down his spine. More like clones or androids of seen back home, he commented in his mind. I can't hardly imagine what family reunions must be like. Call it sister intuition, Nurse Joy answered with a giggle, taking the photograph back from Kabu. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll take care of your Pokémon. With that, she exited to the back room with Kabu's Pokeballs. I guess there are all sorts of things in this universe, Kabu questioned to himself, shaking his head as he walked away. He sat down on one of the sofa chairs, making sure to avoid the very long blue ponytail of a woman who was sitting on the opposite end, her back to him. Guess all I can do is wait for now, Kabu told himself, digging into his backpack. He pulled out a book on dragon-type Pokémon. I should probably look into what kinds of dragon types there are, and maybe some hints on how to beat this Claire person in her gym. The ponytail moved as the woman behind him shifted. She had overheard what he said and a slow smirk formed on her face. It'll take more than a book to beat the Blackthorn City gym. Kabu stopped and turned to the person behind him. He saw a young woman with intense, light blue eyes that matched her long, flowing hair. A gold band held her ponytail in place, and sharp fringes framed her face. She wore a two-toned blue bodysuit that was both elegant and functional, with a sleek black cape attached with gold shoulder pieces. A pearl-like stone sat at her neckline. Blue knee-high boots and gloves, both with black ring pieces, completed the imposing outfit. What makes you say that? Kabu asked with a raised eyebrow. You don't even know me. Because the gym leader there is the best dragon master around, she answered. Her tone dripping with self-assured arrogance. She is even able to hold her own against the Elite Four of the region. The Elite Four, Kabu echoed, thinking back to the books he'd read. Oh yeah, those very strong trainers that are there to test your skills on whether you are eligible to become a champion. Are you serious? The young woman asked, standing up and turning to face him fully. Her arrogance giving way to a flicker of genuine shock. You're saying that like it's an underwhelming thing. How long have you been a trainer? Only a few days. Her shock immediately morphed into scorn. Then you really don't stand a chance against the Blackthorn City gym. I thought for a second you were at least a competent level, but it seems I got my hopes up for nothing. She gestured round the Pokémon Center with a dismissive sweep of her arm. This isn't somewhere you can just come and earn your first gym badge as a rookie. Kabu paused for a second, his expression unreadable. He looked her over, his ears picking up the whispers of other trainers nearby. He could feel her aura, a potent mix of pride and power that he recognized all too well. It was a familiar energy, one that he had experienced from his mentors, the Saiyan race, and his martial arts masters back home. Her arrogance was on a whole other level, and her way of speaking was eerily similar to Vegeta. He questioned who she was. But a mental assumption quickly formed. This was confirmed when he heard someone nearby whisper her name, Claire. He stood up, his arms crossed, and turned to her. You mean, I don't have a chance to beat you, right? You're the gym leader, aren't you, Claire? Good guess, she replied, genuinely surprised at his quick understanding. How did you know that I was? Well, your ego and arrogance kinda gave it away. Kaboo answered bluntly, a mocking tone in his voice. Not only that, I was able to hear your name from other trainers around here. But seeing you in person, meh, you don't look all that special. To be honest, kinda disappointing. Calling her arrogant to her face was one thing, but mocking her title and insulting her appearance struck a nerve. The subtle mask of indifference shattered, and her temper flared. She took a step closer, her eyes narrowing to slits. You certainly have a big mouth coming from a rookie. Do you mind giving me your name? My name is Kaboo. Well, then, Kaboo. Claire spat out, her voice low and menacing. I will show you that you stand no chance against me, especially at your level. She turned on her heel just as she heard her name over the monitor. Her Pokémon having been healed, Claire walked away from Kaboo, who watched her leave. He knew he had intentionally provoked her. It was a habit he had developed from being around figures like Vegeta. And it had gotten even worse after he was ostracized by the people of his universe. There was a part of him that wanted to be honest, to push back against the arrogance of those who thought they were better than him. And it wasn't just that. Beneath her arrogance, he could sense her confidence. It was a potent, unshakable confidence, just like the warriors and masters he had trained with. She was a gym leader, a dragon master, and she knew she was stronger than him. That much was a fact. However, that didn't stop him from stepping into this fight. He had to show her he was better than what she saw. And he had to prove to himself that he could still hold his own, even in a world that was so alien to him. The thrill of a real challenge, the blood rushing in his veins, was a feeling he hadn't had in a long time. It was a terrifying but exhilarating feeling that he had almost forgotten how to embrace. He was ready. The polite, sterile atmosphere of the Pokémon Center was abruptly shattered by the gym leader's frustrated huff. Here you are, Ms. Claire. Nurse Joy's voice was gentle, a stark contrast to the annoyance radiating off the Dragon Master. Kaboo turned his head slightly, watching as the nurse handed 2 Pokeballs back to Claire. Thanks, Claire grumbled, her shoulders slumping. I was so close to beating him this time. Nurse Joy, who had seen this exact scene play out countless times, simply giggled. Oh, come on, Claire. You say that every time you bring your Pokémon in after fighting Lance. I bet it was completely one-sided again. A deep blush of embarrassment crept up Claire's neck. Don't say it like that, she retorted, her voice a strained whisper. It's the same thing every time he comes to town, Nurse Joy pointed out, her tone still light and playful. You challenge him, and he defeats you each and every time. He's the champion now, Claire. There's no shame in losing to the strongest trainer in the region. I know, Claire grimaced, her fists clenching at her sides. He's my cousin, but the difference in our strength is so vast. I know I'll get stronger if I just keep at it. Every battle will get me closer to beating him. Sure, Nurse Joy's voice was full of warmth. See you next time. Thanks, Claire replied, her voice trailing off as she walked away. Kaboo, still seated on the sofa, had listened to the entire exchange with a subtle smirk. He was an excellent judge of character, and the brief conversation had given him a wealth of information. So Claire's cousin is far stronger than her, huh? He contemplated, the pieces clicking into place. They said his name was Lance. And he was the champion. He had to admit, the dynamic was familiar. A determined, fiery warrior constantly striving to surpass a powerful rival. A goal that seemed just out of reach. It reminded him of Vegeta's relentless pursuit of Goku. It was the mark of a true warrior. The fact that a gym leader, a powerful one, by all accounts was till so far from the champion's level was a sobering thought. It meant the power scale in this world was far more vast than he had initially assumed. He dug through his backpack, pulling out his book on Johto. He found the section on the Elite Four and the champion, reading it with renewed focus until he was called up to retrieve his Pokémon. He thanked Nurse Joy and, with his Pokeballs in hand, he stepped outside. Rereading the passage. Every region has its own Elite Four, featuring 4 powerful trainers, each specializing in a certain type, Kaboo read, his eyes scanning the text. Their duty is to challenge trainers who are able to obtain 8 gym badges. Whoever is able to defeat all the Elite Four will then challenge the reigning champion, dubbing them the strongest in the region. However, should another trainer hold the title of champion, they must challenge that person in a battle in order to claim that title. He closed the book, his gaze fixed on the grand, almost mythical looking mountain peaks that surrounded Blackthorn City. The gym was located somewhere high up in that jagged landscape. I shouldn't sell them short, I guess. The same goes for Claire, even if she is an arrogant fool. If she says that she can compete with them, then her power is not to be trifled with. A flicker of a memory, sharp and painful, crossed his mind. The roar of a ki blast, the agonizing feeling of his body being torn apart. The cold, mocking laughter of Demigra. He was no longer the time patroller who had stood side by side with the Z fighters, the one who had defeated god-level threats. He was just Kaboo, a human in a new world. His ki was suppressed, his power hidden, his sense of self shattered. The past few days with Madeline had been a small step, a flicker of a flame trying to ignite in the darkness. She had reminded him of the importance of trust, a concept that felt alien to him after everything he had been through. But the battle with Claire was different. This was a challenge to his very core. To his pride, to his identity as a warrior. I am not going to let that stop me from taking her on. My pride won't allow it. I will win. His mind drifted back to his time as a time patroller in Universe 7. The countless missions, working alongside Goku, Vegeta, Trunks, and the other Z fighters as they neutralized temporal distortions and fixed broken timelines. The thrill of the battle. The rigorous training sessions with his mentors, the friendly sparring with his friends. The immense satisfaction of saving countless lives and, finally, defeating Demigra with Goku by his side. The praise and recognition he received for his efforts had been the greatest feeling in the world. But that was all gone. Demigra had not only messed with his friends and nearly destroyed the universe, but he had also messed with Kaboo's emotions and spirit. The psychological wounds, the constant nightmares, and the gnawing feeling of worthlessness were all a result of that final confrontation. He wanted to get back to who he was, to be the person that others could count on again. He had to become better, stronger, more capable than the person he was now. The man who had been defeated and left behind. He had to suppress the fear and reclaim his identity. He had to be a hero again, a Saiyan. Time to take on the gym. He told himself, the fire of his old self burning brighter than it had in a long time. With a powerful surge of energy, he started running toward the destination. Even without his full ki, his physical strength and speed, the result of decades of intense training, were far beyond that of a normal human. He was a blur of motion, drawing surprised gasps and pointing fingers from the townspeople. But he didn't care. His mind was set on one destination, and destination only, the Blackthorn City Gym. It didn't take him long to reach the base of the mountain and catch a glimpse of the gym. It was a pretty classy, mansion-like place, at least 2 stories high, with imposing dragon statues guarding the front door. He raced towards it, only to encounter 2 trainers at the entrance. One of them was Claire, who was already waiting. The other was a young man with spiky, light red hair and piercing black eyes. His attire was a navy blue and black tunic with red-orange trimming, complete with a belt around his waist and large black boots with orange rings around the tops. Much like Claire's but with a different color scheme. He even sported a cape like Claire's, black on the outside, but his was lined with a vibrant red on the inside. I assume you just got your Pokemon healed again, cousin, the man asked, his voice calm and almost regal. I swear I will beat you one of these days, Claire growled, her voice full of frustration. But don't forget that I'm always training, too. However, I noticed you seem to be a bit more irritable than normal. Oh, just some rookie trainer who has only just started becoming one is deciding he can take on my gym, Claire explained. A sneer on her face. He insulted me, my title, and called me arrogant. Well, you do tend to have that kind of personality, the man noted with a knowing smile. You have to realize there are trainers stronger than you out there. I know there might even be trainers stronger than me. But even so, he shouldn't have said it to my face. Claire grimaced. And for that, it is the truth, and you know it. Kaboo called out, his voice sharp and loud, getting the attention of both of them as he approached the scene. You certainly came here quickly, Claire stated, narrowing her eyes as she glared at him. Listen, I didn't come here to argue, even if you deserved that one, Kabu said, trying to divert the conversation. I just have a habit of being too blunt for my own good. I even have a knack for mocking people's titles or anything like that. HMPH. You have some nerve talking to me like that, Claire huffed, clearly still annoyed. But I still think you are far too inexperienced to take on my gym. Now, give him a chance, the man told her, looking at Kabu with an amused curiosity. Apologies for my cousin, she gets like this because of me. I take it that means you are the champion, Lance? Kabu asked, his eyes scanning the man's aura. He could feel it now, the immense power of his Pokemon flowing through him, a power that was vast and intimidating, far beyond even Madeline's. That's right, it's nice to meet an up-and-coming trainer like yourself, Lance greeted him, a hint of genuine interest in his voice. I am rather surprised you were so easily able to tell who I was. It wasn't too hard since I overheard Claire and Nurse Joy speaking about you, the Saiyan explained, a ghost of a smirk on his face. You heard that? Claire asked, surprised by his sense of hearing, which was another sign that he was far from a normal human. What were you talking about? Lance asked Claire, a mischievous glint in his eye. And nothing much, she answered, her face flushing with embarrassment. It was actually pretty funny, Kabu said, his bluntness completely unfiltered. Nurse Joy was speaking about how all your matches were pretty much one-sided, and that Claire was determined to beat you one of these days. If you ask me, I'd say it's never going to happen. Hey, Claire barked at him, her temper flaring again. Kabu just smirked, while Lance let out a long sigh at both of their behaviors. Oh, I'm sorry, was I speaking too much, wasn't I? Kabu asked, pretending to have just realized he might have said too much. Like an Aerodactyl's iron head, Lance answered with a dry tone. Before asking, so, would you mind if I ask for your name, and where you hail from? My name is Kabu, from Akrutique City. I see, Lance examined Kabu's appearance, before taking a good look at his face. A frown formed on his face, as if he was trying to place him. Is there something on my face or something? Kabu asked, his guard immediately going up. No, not exactly, but for some reason. I feel like I've seen you in a selfie or maybe a video before. You're the person with the Eevee, yes? Lance answered, his gaze piercing. Kabu simply nodded, his nervousness growing. Lance paused for a second, then turned to Claire. Would you mind if I judge your gym battle? You want to be a judge for one of my battles? Claire asked, surprised at the request. I'm actually curious about this man. Lance answered, looking back at Kabu. I want to see him battle you. Kabu felt his muscles tense. Was this guy suspicious about his origins? Did he see the battles he had before? Or did he see the person he was? Either way, Lance's direct gaze and calm demeanor were making him extremely nervous. This was a man who not only wielded immense power but also possessed an insight that went beyond the ordinary. Very well, then, Claire answered, her pride taking over. She looked at Kabu with a renewed fire in her eyes. I'll be sure to whip this rookie into shape and show him how outclassed he is. Quote, hold on, Lance stopped her. Let's battle out here. I don't think there's any need to go into the gym. Don't tell me you are underestimating me, too. Kabu questioned Lance, narrowing his eyes at the champion. Not at all, you need this experience. And besides, I just want to see for myself if these rumors are true, that's all, Lance answered, his face unreadable. He looked to Claire, who sighed and nodded in understanding. This was it, the battle that would test Kabu's new abilities, his fragile trust, and his returning pride, all under the watchful eye of a champion. In a matter of moments, the atmosphere outside the Blackthorn City gym transformed. The casual, almost friendly scene was replaced with the serious, focused tension of a looming battle. Claire and Kabu stood a good distance from each other on the stone path leading up to the gym's main entrance, their eyes locked in a silent standoff. Lance positioned himself on the sidelines. His posture relaxed but his attention absolute. This battle between Claire of the Blackthorn City Gym and the trainer Kabu of Akrutique City will now begin, Lance announced, his voice carrying clearly over the crisp mountain air. It will be a one-on-one match, each trainer using 4 Pokemon each. Hey, what the hell? I only have 2 Pokemon. Kabu addressed the champion abruptly, his voice full of disbelief. Claire smirked, her confidence unshakable. Don't worry, I probably won't even need more than 1. Her condescending tone earned her a sharp glare from Kabu, but he held his tongue. Lan, Ce cleared his throat to get their attention back on him. In addition to these rules, only the trainer is allowed to swap out Pokémon. Would each trainer please call out their first Pokémon? I've got this. Dragonair, go! Claire threw out one of her sleek Pokeballs, and a flash of brilliant light erupted into the form of a long, serpentine dragon. It was a beautiful, ethereal creature with a cerulean blue body, a pristine white belly, and dark, intelligent eyes. It had a small horn on its head, elegant wings on the side of its head, and what looked like polished jewels on its neck and the tip of its tail. It coiled gracefully in the air, its presence alone radiating a silent, immense power. Kaboo immediately pulled out his Pokédex, raising it to the creature. Dragonair, the mechanical voice began. The dragon Pokémon, and the evolved form of Dratini. Dragonair stores an enormous amount of energy inside its body. It is said to alter weather conditions in its vicinity by discharging energy from the crystals on its neck and tail. So that's what a dragon type looks like, Kaboo muttered, his eyes narrowing. I've seen bigger. He tucked the Pokédex away, a deep fire igniting within him. I will show her how strong the person before her is. I'm not just some rookie. He mentally told himself, the words echoing with the pride of a warrior long past. He held out one of his Pokeballs, his thumb hovering over the button. The subtle, yet powerful key of his Pokemon within the ball was a grounding force. Ladybug, let's do it. He released his partner, and the small, red ladybug Pock. Amon with its determined expression flew into the air, its wings a blur. It was a stark contrast to the elegant, powerful dragon it was facing, but Ladybug's key, a soft, red-white aura that only Kaboo could truly perceive, pulsed with courage. The weights on its ankles and wrists, though not visible from this distance, were a testament to its brutal training. Let the battle commence, Lance called out, waving a hand to signal the beginning of the battle. I'll let you have the first move, Claire, Kaboo told the Dragon Master, a hint of his Saiyan honor code coming through. You're serious? She questioned, a sneer on her face. Usually, challengers have the first move. My opponents go first. It's part of my honor code, Kaboo stated simply. It was a principle drilled into him by his masters. A true warrior gave their opponent the chance to strike first, showing a confidence that their own power would prevail no matter what. Then your honor code will be your downfall, Claire retorted, not missing a beat. Use Thunder Wave. Dragonair's horn began to glow with a brilliant blue energy. It wasn't a direct lightning bolt, but a wide, crackling wave of electricity that spread out from its body, rapidly arcing toward Ladybug. Dodge and go in with a Mach Punch. Kaboo shouted. Ladybug immediately responded, its wingbeats a frantic blur as it tried to fly above the oncoming attack. It shot forward with an almost invisible speed, a faint white glow surrounding its tiny fist. However, Dragonair was not an ordinary Pokémon. It was a master of its movements, a being of pure grace and elemental power. It simply twisted its long body, redirecting the powerful electrical surge. Ladybug, unable to stop its momentum, flew directly into the path of the attack. Kaboo was startled, but what happened next was even more surprising. The blast didn't seem to do any physical damage, but sparks of electricity now coursed about Ladybug's body, its movements slowing and becoming erratic. Are these the signs of paralysis? Kaboo realized with a jolt, his mind racing. This wasn't a simple stun. He could feel the ki within Ladybug's body being disrupted, its energy flow becoming chaotic and unstable. It was a clever and debilitating move. Now you'll see how outclassed you are. Claire shouted, a triumphant look on her face. Use Fire Blast. Dragonair inhaled deeply, the air around it shimmering with intense heat. The crystals on its neck and tail began to pulse with a ferocious crimson light. With a mighty roar, it expelled a torrent of flames that coalesced into a colossal fireball. Kaboo's eyes widened as the shape of the flames solidified, forming the distinct Japanese kanji for big. The sheer size and power of the attack were overwhelming, a destructive force hurtling directly at the paralyzed Ladybug. Kaboo knew Ladybug couldn't dodge. It was a moment of pure desperation, of raw instinct honed by a lifetime of combat. He had to rely on a technique that wasn't a Pokémon move at all, but a direct application of their shared ki training. In that case, I have no other choice, but I have to try. He thought frantically. Ladybug, use Energy Shield, hurry. Ladybug, despite its paralysis, heard the urgency in Kaboo's voice. Its eyes squeezed shut in concentration, its inner ki surging. The red-white aura that had been so faint now flared to life, forming a translucent, shimmering barrier around its body just in time. The fire blast made contact, and there was an eruption of fire and light that consumed the area, the heat washing over Kabu even from a distance. When the eruption finally died down, a cloud of smoke lingered. Kabu strained his eyes, and a wave of relief washed over him when he saw Lediba still floating. However, the relief was short-lived. His partner's body was trembling, its aura flickering and dimming. It had managed to block the attack, but the pressure to create and sustain the barrier was far too much for it. The little bug Pokemon slowly descended, its eyes swirling with dizziness. Before it hit the ground unconscious. Lediba is unable to battle. Dragonair is the winner, Lance declared, his voice calm and firm. Kabu was stunned, shocked, humiliated. His Lediba, a Pokemon he had personally trained to a level of speed and power far beyond any other Lediba, had been defeated with a single, brutal combination. He couldn't even get a single hit in. The battle was over almost before it had even begun. This is the strength Claire has at that level. He realized, his voice barely a whisper. He looked at Lediba, its small body lying motionless on the ground. Before recalling it to its Pokeball, he placed the ball back in his pocket, his hand trembling uncontrollably. He started to shake, a physical manifestation of the panic and shame that was flooding his mind. This wasn't just a loss, it was a total, absolute outclassing. He gripped his right arm tightly with his left hand, his knuckles turning white. His mind was a whirlwind of frantic, self-chastising thoughts. Get a hold of yourself, damn it. You are not done yet. He roared in his head. I have to remember the time patroller I was once. A warrior who had his back to the wall. And still fought with all his might and courage, and came out on top. You are not the emotional and cowardly monster they made you out to be. You are better than this. Be better than that. He was fighting a war on two fronts. The battle against Claire and the battle against his own mind, his own trauma. The Demigra incident, the death, the pain, it all came rushing back, threatening to overwhelm him. He could not, would not, allow himself to be a victim again. He had to be strong, for his Pokemon, for his pride, for the memory of who he was. Better than who, monkey? The voice, so familiar and so full of malice, was enough to make Kabu's blood run cold. He froze, his shaking ceasing, a deep sense of dread and disbelief washing over him. He slowly turned his head to the left, his eyes widening in horror. He saw him, or a perfect, malevolent projection of him. The one who had been responsible for his death, who had invaded Time Nest, and who had caused all of the anguish and trauma he carried. In his base form, the demon god had short, red hair and wore a black and white overcoat with a blue cape over his shoulders. His name was Demigra, and he was smiling a cruel, merciless, and all too familiar smile of triumph. The triumphant laughter of the demon god, Demigra, echoed not in the real world, but in the terrifying theater of Kabu's mind. His body was frozen, his mind screaming. In disbelief as the specter of his tormentor materialized before him. How? Just how? I killed you. You're dead. You're not supposed to be here in the first place. Kabu's mind raced, a torrent of frantic questions. Was this a mirage? A trick of a mind under immense stress? Or was this dark figure truly here, mocking him from beyond the grave? Do you honestly think that was the end for me? HMPHHMHMHM ha 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 ha. Demigra's laugh was a sharp, grating sound, a sound Kabu knew all too well. Oh, how foolish you are, Saiyan. Of course, I'm here. Where else would you expect me to be? Tell me, child, how's your little game been going? What is it called? Oh yes, a Pokemon battle. These fascinating creatures have piqued my interest, especially your little pets. Which brings me to a question, why isn't Eevee here yet? Don't tell me you were planning on using her as a plan B. Honestly, if you thought you could suppress your memories of our little dance, you're more naive than I thought. Even in death, you'll never get rid of me so easily. Ha 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 ha. Each word was a poisoned dart, and Demigra's mention of Eevee was the final barb. A wave of uncontrollable rage, a primal fury that Kabu had tried so hard to bury, boiled over. He lunged forward, throwing a powerful, ki-infused punch, but his fist met only empty air. The apparition simply laughed, its form flickering like a bad signal. The sound of that cruel laughter was all that remained as Kabu grabbed his head with both hands, his breathing rapid and shallow, a desperate attempt to hold himself together. Lance and Claire watched on, a mix of curiosity and concern on their faces. They saw a young man, a stranger, yelling at something that wasn't there, flailing his fist at thin air. He's punching at nothing, almost like someone is standing behind him. Lance thought, his champion's intuition kicking in. Could something be wrong with his mind? And more importantly, before Lediba took that last blow, Kabu shouted about an energy shield. And the next thing I saw, the Pokemon created a force field-like shield. That's not a psychic-type move, and it's not in the Pokédex. Kabu, this man, there's something about him. Finally, Claire's voice broke through the silence, her tone a mix of impatience and condescension. Are you starting to realize the difference in power here? It's not too late to forfeit. Kabu twisted her words into an insult, his eyes still wide with rage and fear. This fight isn't over yet. I still have one more to go. Go, Eevee, no holding back. He threw out his last Pokeball, a blur of red and white. And with a brilliant flash, Eevee appeared on the battlefield. She immediately adopted a fighting stance, her small body coiled with the immense power of her training. However, she sensed her trainer's erratic emotions, the violent spikes in his ki, and looked back at him with a worried expression. Focus on the fight, Eevee. We have a battle to win, no matter what it takes. Kabu called to her, his voice hoarse. Eevee, though still concerned, turned her focus back to the Dragonair. It was in that moment that Lance took notice of something else. Eevee was standing on her hind legs, perfectly straight and balanced. Lance's eyes widened. The rumors, they were true after all, he thought, impressed despite himself. This confirmed that Kabu was no ordinary trainer and that there was something truly special about him. Claire, meanwhile, was so focused on the insult she'd received that she barely registered the sight of Eevee's unique stance, recomposing herself as she prepared for the next attack. You really are foolish to continue this, Claire sighed, shaking her head. Use Thunder Wave again. Dragonair, fully recovered, unleashed another blue wave of electricity, a powerful surge of energy arcing toward the nimble Eevee. In your dreams, Eevee, counter with Sand Attack. Kabu roared. Claire scoffed. A rookie move like that isn't going to. She was cut short as Eevee, with a powerful kick from her hind leg, sent a massive cloud of dirt and rocks flying with the force of a small cannonball. The sand wasn't meant to blind Dragonair, but to act as a physical shield. It formed a thick, earthen barrier that absorbed the oncoming electricity, dissipating the energy in a burst of dust and sparks. I never saw Sand Attack used in such a way. Claire gasped, genuinely stunned. You ain't seen nothing yet. Kabu responded, a fire of pride and defiance in his eyes. Use Solar Flare. Now. Eevee's eyes widened in surprise, but she trusted Kabu implicitly. She followed his command without hesitation, placing her front paws close to the center of her face with her fingers spread toward her eyes. She shouted, and a blinding flash of pure white light erupted from her body, engulfing the entire area. Ah, my eyes. I can't see anything, Claire screamed, her hands flying to her face. Dragonair, caught off guard, was also blinded, its serpentine body twists ting in the air as its vision was momentarily stolen. The blinding light left the dragon Pokemon completely vulnerable. Alright, now's our chance. Eevee, engage in melee combat. Kabu commanded. Eevee, who had closed her own eyes just in time, rushed forward at an incredible speed. She was a blur, a furious whirlwind of strikes. Her paws were a flurry of blows, delivering several punches and kicks with pinpoint accuracy all over Dragonair's body. The proud dragon Pokemon was helpless, taking every hit from the tiny, furious fox. Now, an uppercut from the ground. Kabu shouted. Eevee planted herself firmly, then delivered a devastating uppercut with both paws, sending Dragonair flying into the air, suspended and disoriented. And now, jump and strike with an axe kick. Eevee leapt high into the air, her momentum carrying her far above her opponent. She twisted her body, bringing her hind leg down in a powerful arc, and delivered a punishing axe kick directly to Dragonair's head. The blow was so forceful it sent the dragon Pokemon crashing back to the ground with a sickening thud. Most impressive, Lance muttered, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and admiration. Claire, who was just starting to regain her vision, looked up in time to see her Pokemon battered and bruised on the ground. It's not over yet, you hear me? She shouted, her voice trembling with rage. Dragonair, showing its incredible fortitude, began to stir, its vision slowly returning. Now, Eevee, one last attack to finish this. Use Swift, Kabu commanded. Eevee, still in the air from her jump, swung her tail with immense force, unleashing a barrage of glimmering, star-shaped projectiles at the recovering Dragonair. Claire was not about to let this happen. Blow them away with Dragon Pulse. She shrieked. Dragonair, with a final, desperate surge of energy, inhaled deeply and breathed out a massive, swirling torrent of rainbow-colored energy that took the form of a fearsome dragon. It moved with incredible speed and power, effortlessly consuming Eevee's stars and striking her while she was still in the air. There was a concussive explosion, and Eevee fell to the ground, heavily injured by the attack. "Eevee, get up," Caboose shouted to his partner, a desperate plea in his voice. "We can't lose like this." "I won't. We have to push forward, to the limit and beyond." Eevee struggled, her body shaking from the immense pain. She managed to get to her knees, then her feet, but her breathing was ragged and her ki was fading fast. The two dragon masters, both of whom had witnessed a battle unlike any they had ever seen, looked at the exhausted pair with a shared expression of great concern. This was no ordinary battle. This was a desperate fight for survival, a clash of wills, and a display of a power they didn't fully understand. Before Eevee could even hear Kaboo's desperate plea or attempt to move, the world around her came to a complete stop. The swirling dust, the strained expressions of Claire and Lance, even the faint gust of wind, all were frozen in place. Eevee realized time had stopped once more, but only in this small space, only for her. If time had stopped, then that meant, "You seem to be having a little trouble here, sister." The voice, calm and laced with an unnerving confidence, was instantly recognizable. Eevee's eyes, though still exhausted, turned to the right. Standing beside her, with one arm casually draped over her shoulder, was her doppelganger. This time, there were no shadows hiding her face. She looked exactly like Eevee, but her eyes held a chilling, primal yellow glow. And a faint, knowing smirk played on her lips. "You're probably thinking, why am I here? Why do I look exactly like you? Why am I not a pest like those other Eevees? And why did time suddenly stop moving? Isn't that what you're thinking?" The other Eevee said, her voice a calm, smooth purr. Eevee was too exhausted to respond or even move her body. The doppelganger was right. These were the very questions swirling in her mind. "Look, we don't have much time for chit-chat, so let's get to the part about why I'm here in the first place." The other Eevee's smirk vanished, replaced by a cold, emotionless stare. "I'm here to help you in your little situation. All I need is a yes, or no, all right." Eevee was surprised to hear this, but a deep part of her was wary. How could this being, this stranger who had called her sister, possibly help in a situation like this? And if she was offering help, what was the catch? The feeling of familiarity was overwhelming, but she couldn't shake the suspicion. "Don't waste our time overthinking," the doppelganger continued, her voice growing impatient. "What I mean is, I just need a vessel to take control. And you are the only one available here. Not only is it for your master's sake, but for your own as well. I can do so much more than what your simple moves can accomplish. Even that little bit of training that Saiyan gave you wasn't much. But it was better than nothing. And besides, I want to teach this so-called Dragon Master a lesson." She raised a paw, her open palm facing Eevee. "So what do you say? Do we have a deal? After all, I did promise I'd be back." Eevee's body felt like it was made of lead. Her trainer was in trouble. She was outclassed. She had no other choice. She looked at her doppelganger and, with a silent nod, a small, knowing smirk returned to her face. "So you finally decided? Good," the other Eevee said, closing the distance between them. "But don't worry, once this is all over, you won't forget any of it. And you'll get a front row seat to the show, my little sister, or should I say, my little king." Before Eevee could even ask what she meant, the doppelganger pressed two fingers to Eevee's forehead. A brilliant, blinding light erupted, engulfing them both, until it all faded away, and time resumed. "We gotta at least get one ko first," Caboose shouted to Eevee. "Let's show our resolve. Quick attack." But Eevee didn't move. She didn't respond to his voice. Instead, she slowly looked down at her paws, raising them to her face as if seeing them for the first time. She clenched her hands into fists, then opened them again. Her eyes, now a vibrant, primal yellow, closed for a moment. Then, with a series of quick, fluid motions, she began to stretch her arms and legs, cracking her neck and fingers like a seasoned warrior preparing for a fight. Kaboo was bewildered. "Eevee, what are you doing? I told you to use quick attack, not work out." "Eevee, are you all right?" he asked, a hint of genuine fear in his voice. Claire saw her chance. "Dragonair, use slam," she shouted. Dragonair swirled its body and slammed its tail at Eevee. But before the strike could make contact, Eevee simply vanished. The attack passed through the spot she had been standing, missing its mark entirely. "Wait, what just happened?" Claire stammered, stunned. Kaboo was equally stunned. "What happened?" She dodged without even looking. If that's the case, where is she? Just then, Kaboo felt an energy signature that made his blood run cold. It was a key level that skyrocketed to an IM. Possible rank far beyond anything he had ever felt from a Pokemon. A DD rank level, at least. This energy level is off the charts, and it's coming from Eevee. She didn't have this much power even AF. Tear all my training, wait a minute, that can only mean one thing, he thought, a terrifying realization dawning on him. If these Pokemon have something similar to the Saiyans, then she has. He felt the key signature in the air and raised his head, his eyes widening in a mixture of awe and terror. Lance, seeing Kaboo's expression, followed his gaze and was equally stunned. What are you guys doing? Claire demanded, her confusion turning to anger. But then she felt a chill run down her spine. She looked up, and her jaw dropped. Eevee was not only in the air, but she was floating. Her body was surrounded by a powerful, crackling ki aura that was no longer brown, but a vibrant, primal mix of green and yellow. She slowly opened her eyes, revealing a pair of piercing, yellow eyes that were far from the gentle gaze Kaboo knew. A devilish smirk spread across her face. Yes. Finally, Eevee's voice was different, deeper and more confident than her usual high-pitched call. Took long enough. This body is mine as it is. Now I can go all out on whatever I feel like. She looked down at them all, her primal eyes settling on Kaboo. Hello there, Kaboo. It's nice to finally meet you under better circumstances. As for you, human, she said, her head swiveling to look at Dragonair and Claire, are you ready for round 2, weakling? Kaboo's mind was a whirlwind of frantic thoughts. What is up with her? She looks like a different person now, and she reminds me of my primitive Saiyan self. Her energy level is an impossible DD rank. If things go south, I'll have to step in myself. The being now inhabiting Eevee's body, who Kaboo mentally labeled Prime, landed softly on the ground, her new, primal yellow eyes fixed on her opponent. A wide, maniacal grin stretched across her face, the expression of a hunter who had finally found her prey. So, Miss Dragon Master, are you ready to fight seriously? Prime Eevee's voice was low and gravelly, a complete departure from Eevee's natural sound. Because I am. She was ready for a massacre, prepared to tear her opponent limb from limb. Lance, watching from the side, was deeply concerned, not only for Claire and her Pokemon, but for the safety of everyone present. The fact that this Pokemon could speak was not through psychic telepathy, it was a real, audible voice. He also noticed Kaboo's posture, his entire body tensed and ready to leap into action. As if he knew he would have to step in. Claire, however, was still reeling from the shock. The battle was no longer a matter of winning or losing, it was now deeply personal. That small fox Pokemon had called her a weakling. Her pride, her entire identity as a Dragon Master, had been insulted. Weakling, I'll show you who the weakling really is. Dragonair, use Slam, and this time, don't miss. Claire shrieked, the command filled with furious desperation. Dragonair, with a renewed sense of purpose, swirled its body and slammed its tail at Prime Eevee for a second time. But this time, Prime Eevee didn't vanish. She simply stood her ground, casually reaching out and catching Dragonair's tail in her paw without a single ounce of effort. The force of the blow was so immense that it created a shockwave. A deafening sonic boom that shattered a nearby window and sent tremors through the ground. Lance and Claire watched, stunned. This wasn't a different Pokemon, it was a completely different level of power. The strength, the speed, the demeanor, it was all alien. Come now, don't tell me that was the best you've got, Prime Eevee purred, her grin widening. Let me show you your pet how truly outclassed you are. With that, she grabbed Dragonair's tail and began spinning her around like a toy, the massive dragon Pokemon a helpless blur of blue and white. D-I-I-I-I-E. Prime Eevee roared, her voice a terrifying mix of glee and rage. She swung Dragonair with immense force, slamming her into the stone ground with a sound like a small explosion. Dragonair, no, use Fire Blast to get out. Claire screamed, her voice cracking with fear. Before Dragonair could even open her mouth, Prime Eevee grabbed the front of her jaw, preventing the attack. No fire tricks for you, little dragon. Your punishment is far from over. Prime Eevee's aura flared, and she shot into the sky, dragging Dragonair's tail and smashing her repeatedly into the side of the gym building. Kaboo's anxiety spiked. Eevee, stop, that's enough, you're going to end up killing her. He shouted, his voice ringing with authority. Prime Eevee ignored him, her maniacal laughter echoing off the surrounding mountains. She finally let go, sending Dragonair spiraling high into the air. As the injured Pokemon began to fall, Prime Eevee rocketed toward it, unleashing a brutal flurry of strikes to its body. With one final, powerful blow, she sent Dragonair crashing back down to the ground with a force that created a plume of smoke and a small crater in the stone path. Dragonair. Claire's voice was a whisper. A mix of disbelief and horror. When the smoke cleared, Dragonair was revealed, unconscious. She was alive, but covered in bruises and minor injuries. The gym leader's pride had been utterly crushed. How is that even possible? You dominated her like it was nothing. Claire was speechless, her world turned upside down. Eevee, what have you done? You know what are you even doing in her body, Prime? Kaboo asked, his eyes burning with anger and concern. He knew this entity's true identity now. Prime Eevee simply laughed. Ah ha 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 ha. Is this the best you've got? Then you've disappointed me. Ha ha. Come on, give me a real challenge. The big one. I can't wait ha 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 ha. Her thirst for combat was insatiable, and Kaboo knew he was experiencing the same out of control. Primal bloodlust that he'd felt in another lifetime. That's it. Lance's shout cut through the tension. He had seen enough. Raising a hand, he declared, both Pokemon are unable to battle. The match is a draw. Until further notice, this Pokemon is suspended from any further battles for causing collateral damage. Lance's voice was firm, and his eyes met Kaboo's. The look was a clear message. Get your Pokemon under control. Kaboo didn't want to draw more attention to himself, but he had no choice. He had to bring Eevee back to normal. The only way was to defeat Prime Eevee and knock some sense into her. But Prime Eevee's eyes narrowed, the manic grin replaced by a glare of pure, murderous intent. You dare interrupt my fight, human. I'll put you in your place where you belong. She shouted, her ki flaring violently. She shot forward, a streak of yellow and green energy rushing toward the champion. Before she could reach him, Kaboo intercepted her, swinging a powerful roundhouse kick directly at her gut. He only used about 20% of his full strength, but it was enough to send Prime Eevee flying backward until she collided with the side of the gym building with a powerful thud. Lance, get Claire out of here now, while I take care of my Pokemon. Kaboo ordered, his voice raw with a newfound authority. Lance understood immediately, grabbing Claire by the arm and pulling her away. Once this is over, you and I need to talk about this, you know that, right? Lance warned, his eyes full of both suspicion and a deep curiosity. I promise I'll explain everything once this is over, I promise. Kaboo replied, his focus already on the battle. Lance saw the sincerity and determination in his eyes. He gave a grateful smirk. Of course you will. Bring your Pokemon back to her senses, Lance said. And with that, the two humans were gone, retreating into the gym building. Now, it was just the Saiyan and his Pokemon. Kaboo felt Prime Eevee's energy signature from behind the smoke and rubble. She emerged, her body completely unharmed, a look of insane joy on her face. You decided to intervene. This is good. That means I can go all out. She raised her head, revealing a crazed grin. Fighting you one-on-one, a Saiyan, is perfect. And yes, I know you are. I knew you from the moment we met that day. You awakened me. It was as Kaboo had suspected. The dark, hidden part of him, his power and primal rage, had found a new vessel in his partner. He knew his path was clear. This wasn't just a battle, it was an exorcism. He had to fight himself, to defeat the darkness within. Trust me, Prime, if a fight is what you wanted, Kaboo said, beginning to power up his ki, his aura of emerald green and violet flaring to life, then a fight is what you'll get. He assumed a classic martial arts combat stance, his body radiating a power that no one in this world had ever felt. Prime Eevee, her own chaotic aura swirling around her, mirrored his posture, her grin growing wider. Kaboo's ki flared with a soft, green and violet hue, a stark contrast to the chaotic, primal energy surrounding Prime Eevee. He stood his ground, his gaze unwavering. I'll give you one last warning, Prime, he said, his voice low and firm. Give my Eevee back her body, now, or what? Prime Eevee cut in, a sneer on her face. You're going to give me a lecture until you bore me to death, or are we starting this fight? Right here and right now. Without another word, she powered up her ki, the green and yellow aura intensifying as she shot toward Kaboo, a blur of raw power and murderous intent. Kaboo closed his eyes, taking a single, deep breath through his nose. He opened them, and the look of determination on his face was that of a true warrior who had faced death 1,000 times. You asked for this, Prime. Don't say I didn't warn you. He knew she wouldn't give up until she got what she wanted. But Kaboo couldn't bring himself to hurt his partner. His plan was to use only 20% of his power. Just enough to tire her out, to drain her strength and stamina without causing serious harm. For now, his strategy was pure defense. He would wait for his moment to strike. "You're mine now," she shrieked, launching a flurry of punches and kicks with astonishing force and speed. But Kabu's reflexes were far superior. He dodged and deflected her attacks, his movements fluid and precise. As he fought, he analyzed her level. Her strength and speed were impressive, but she lacked control. Her attacks were wild, predictable, and easy to read. "You're finished," she yelled, swiping a series of kicks at his head. Kabu dodged, and in a flash, his body disappeared, leaving only an after-image behind. Prime Eevee's attacks hit nothing but air. "What? Where are you? Stop dodging and face me," she screamed in frustration, looking wildly around the gym's main room. A light poke on her shoulder made her turn. "Huh!" Before she could react, Kabu jabbed her in the stomach with 2 fingers. Then followed up with a powerful, open palm strike to her back that sent her flying forward. She crashed into the far wall, leaving a deep indentation. She quickly emerged from the smoke, her face contorted with anger. "That was a cheap shot, and you know it, Saiyan." "HMPH. Well, that's coming from you," Kabu replied, his tone dry. "Oh, please, all I did was give a hand and teach that wannabe master a lesson." "True," Kabu countered, "but you also hurt her Pokemon, too. You almost killed her in the process. You're lucky she's still alive." Unbeknownst to them, Lance and Claire had returned, hiding their presence just outside the doorway. Lance had lied, telling Kabu he would get Claire out of the room, but he wanted to know the truth. And Claire, too stubborn to run away, was worried about the two of them. Even if she wouldn't admit it. "One last chance, Prime. Give up. You know you don't stand a chance against me. And go back to being a horse while my sister gets to be the king again." Prime Eevee scoffed. "I won't come back until I've satisfied my hunger." She let out a roar, her ki flaring as she charged toward Kabu at full speed. "A horse and a king?" Kabu muttered, confused, as he launched a series of ki blasts from his hands. Prime Eevee dodged and deflected the blasts with ease, her wild movements proving too fast for the slow-moving projectiles. When they were close enough, they rammed into each other, their auras clashing, before they began to fly around the room, trading blow for blow. Claire watched in stunned disbelief. "How is this possible? I thought Aura Guardians had abilities. But this is beyond that. Were they holding back on me this entire time?" "No," Lance replied, his eyes glued to the fight. "If that were the case, this would be a very different story." "How can you be so calm about this?" Claire retorted. "If they're not holding back to mock me, then what is this about?" "Think about it," Lance said, his voice measured. Kabu was holding back and acting differently. But this is not acting. It's obvious this man has had a difficult life, and he didn't even know his Eevee was acting like this. If we want the truth, we need to be patient. For now, all we can do is watch. His logic was sound. Kabu hadn't been faking his frustration or his confusion. He was just as shocked by Eevee's change as they were. Reluctantly, Claire agreed and continued to watch the two powerhouses go at it. The fight continued, a whirlwind of speed and power. They clashed again, their fists locking as they tried to overpower each other. "Grrrrrrrgh." Kabu grunted, struggling. "Rrrrrgh." Prime Eevee growled back. "You are not going to win." With a final surge of ki, Kabu overpowered her, pushing her back before delivering a sharp headbutt. He backflipped to gain distance, pulling his right hand back as ki began to concentrate in his fist. "Take this," he roared. Super God Fist. He launched a fast, straight-line punch. It connected squarely with Prime Eevee's face, sending her flying like a ragdoll. She collided with the far wall, a plume of dust and debris erupting. Kabu held his guard, waiting for her to reappear, but instead, he heard a sound. Laughter. Not the manic, bloodthirsty laugh from before, but a low, excited, and exhausted chuckle. As the smoke dissipated, she got up but immediately fell back to her knees, crossing her legs on the ground. "What's so funny?" Kabu asked, lowering his fist. Prime Eevee continued to laugh, then she stopped. She spat a tooth into her palm and held it up for him to see. Her body had only minor bruises. But she was completely exhausted. "I'm laughing because I'm now satisfied with this fight and my experience in this body," she said, a wide, content grin on her face. "You made me lose a tooth. I so much liked it. If you're all done with your games, I have a question that's been bothering me." Prime Eevee's demeanor shifted, her yellow eyes now calm and serious. She turned her full attention to him. Earlier, you called your sister a king, and yourself a horse. What exactly did you mean by that? Prime Eevee's eyes narrowed, not at him, but at the two low-power signatures hiding in the doorway. She could sense them, they had been watching the entire fight. If Kaboo heard her answer, then they would, too. Do you really want to know, Saiyan? She said with a smirk. Kaboo sensed her awareness. He briefly glanced at the doorway, a look of understanding passing between him and Lance. He had promised to explain everything, and he would, but for now, the truth had to wait. He returned his full attention to Prime Eevee. Yes. Prime Eevee let out a low, devious chuckle. You know, I must admit, it never ceases to amaze me how brainless you can be, as can my little sister. You've lost your pride from earlier. Why are you just standing there, Kaboo? What's the difference between a king and his horse? Claire and Lance were confused. The question seemed to come out of nowhere, as if it had no place in a fight. What the hell are you saying? Kaboo demanded. I'm not talking about the obvious stuff, like one's an animal and one's a person, or one has 2 legs and one has 4, she explained. I'm talking about ability and power. That's what's puzzling. If 2 beings have the exact same potential, why is it that one becomes the king and leads them into battle, while the other becomes the horse and carries the king? So, what's the characteristic that distinguishes these 2 beings? Kaboo and Lance were silent, their minds working, piecing together the puzzle. If the body was the horse, then the soul or the mind was the king. And what she was saying meant that Eevee, the king, was weaker than the primitive part of her soul, the horse. There's only one answer: instinct, Prime Eevee declared. In order for identical beings to get stronger and gain power, they need to develop a killer instinct. And that instinct is mostly forged in battle. They must develop an insatiable hunger to engage in battle. They must live to mercilessly crush, shred, and slice their enemies. This thirst for power is not just a natural desire. In fact, it forms the very essence of our being. Deep within our body lies the whole instinct to dominate and slaughter our enemies. My friend, you have that, but you lost it. You use your brain to try and win a fight. You attempt to defeat your enemies with reason and logic. You don't tap into those pure, base instincts that exist within your core, waiting to be released, and the simple matter is, it doesn't work. My sister is weak, and so is your pride, Kaboo. Silence fell. Prime Eevee's speech was as clear as day. She was here because she wanted to be awakened, to be released. And it had all happened because Kaboo, a Saiyan, was her trainer. Kaboo couldn't help but wonder if other Pokemon had similar primitive instincts. He knew he would have to ask Supreme Kai of Time and Trunks about it when he got the chance. I'll give my sister's body back now. But listen well, Prime Eevee warned, her eyes glowing. I won't put up with that weakness. I know very well that I don't stand a chance against you, at least at your current level. And I don't know about other Pokemon's primitive versions, but I refuse to play horse to a king who is weaker than me. Someone whose uncertainty and hesitation will end up getting all of us cut to pieces and turned to ashes. If my sister isn't willing to assert her strength and retain the crown, then I'll destroy her, and you, and all of humanity. Which means I'll be king. With her final, chilling words, her eyes rolled back into her head, and her primal aura flickered out. She fell forward, unconscious. Kaboo rushed to her side, catching her before she hit the ground. Kaboo held Eevee in his arms, her small body limp and unconscious. The manic grin and feral yellow eyes were gone, replaced by the gentle, familiar face of his beloved partner. He couldn't help but feel a crushing weight of guilt. It was all his fault. If he hadn't pushed her to her limits in that Pokemon battle, if he hadn't allowed his own fears to cloud his judgment, none of this would have happened. Where did it all go so wrong? This is all my fault, damn it. Kaboo muttered, his voice raw with self-condemnation. A firm, yet gentle hand settled on his shoulder, and he looked up to see Lance standing over him. The champion's face held a complex expression, a mix of scolding authority and a deep, genuine concern. Kaboo, what you did was extremely reckless, and of course it was your fault, Lance said, his voice calm and firm. But I guess it can't be helped, given the situation. He paused, his gaze softening as he continued. You are a trainer, and it is a trainer's duty to be connected with his or her Pokemon in the midst of battle. You did not show any signs of a deep connection or trust in Eevee, or in your own actions, and that was the reason why you lost. I lost because I didn't trust her or myself. And she almost destroyed everything because of me. Kaboo asked, shocked at Lance's words. They were a brutal, truthful reflection of his deepest fears. One part, yes, Lance answered. But on the other hand, I don't know what happened or what could have caused her to enter that state. But after hearing her explanation, it's pretty clear she wants more than a simple Pokemon battle. I can see it in your eyes. You are having a hard time understanding what it means to trust your partner, as well as yourself. Now, I don't know if you haven't learned it, or if you lost it at some point. But you can't become a great trainer unless you gain that connection. Kaboo looked from Lance to the unconscious Eevee in his arms. His eyes, shadowed from everyone, welled up with unshed tears. He was fighting hard, but he couldn't stop them. He knew Lance was right. His tears dripped down onto Eevee's face, and he hugged her firmly, the warmth of his embrace a silent apology. I'm sorry, Kaboo sobbed, his body shaking with the force of his emotion. I'm so sorry, Eevee. This is all my fault. It's because I've lost so much trust I was unable to help you become a good trainer for you. No, your friend. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Damn it. He continued to cry, clutching Eevee tightly to him. Lance and Claire watched in somber silence, the powerful moment feeling too personal to interrupt. After a few moments, Kaboo managed to calm down, though his face remained a mask of profound sadness. He slowly stood up, turning to Claire. I'm sorry about your gym, Claire, and so is your Dragonair. I just hope she'll be alright. He apologized, his voice hoarse. Claire was still processing the events. Her initial anger was gone, replaced by a quiet contemplation. She still wanted answers, but she knew this was not the time. Forget about it. You need to focus on getting your Pokemon to a Pokemon Center. I have a lot on my mind right now. Have a good day, Kaboo. With that, Claire turned and walked toward the city. Leaving them alone, Kaboo and Lance stared at each other for a while, a silent understanding passing between them. Look, I know you want the truth, Kaboo began. But could this wait until my Pokemon gets healed? If that's okay with you. We both promised we would talk when this was over, Lance replied. But after the disaster that just occurred, you may go now. I'll be nearby if you need me. Thank you, Lance. I'm glad you understand. Kaboo turned, holding Eevee close to his chest, and began to walk away from the gym. But he wasn't heading for the Pokemon Center. No, he had something else in mind. He knew he possessed technology and medical knowledge far beyond this world, and he wasn't about to risk his partner's recovery to anyone else. The evening settled over Blackthorn City, casting long shadows across the cobbled streets. Kaboo, with the unconscious Eevee held carefully in his arms, didn't head for the Pokemon Center. He had a different destination in mind, one he kept hidden from the world. Once he was a good distance from the gym and out of sight, he produced a small capsule from his pocket and pressed the button. In a flash of light and a puff of smoke, a sleek, modern house appeared in the middle of a secluded, wooded area he had found earlier. This was no ordinary house. This was a product of Capsule Corp, a home he had brought with him from his own universe. Designed for the unique life of a time patroller. Inside, it was a hub of advanced technology, including a small, but fully functional medical room. He gently laid Eevee and Lediba on separate platforms, then initiated the process to activate two of the most remarkable pieces of equipment he owned, Capsule Corp's advanced healing tanks. The pods hissed, the lids opening, Kaboo carefully placed his two Pokemon inside. They were submerged in a soothing, blue liquid, and he watched as a fine mist of medical nanites began to envelop their bodies. The damage they had sustained was severe, especially for Eevee, who had been pushed far beyond her physical limits. Lediba was still battered from the initial bout with Dragonair and the strain of creating the energy shield. The healing tanks would work all night. They're humming a steady, reassuring sound in the quiet room. Kaboo watched them from behind the reinforced glass, seeing their small forms covered in bandages and various diagnostic sensors. He felt a profound, aching guilt. They lay there because of him. He had let his pride and his trauma cloud his judgment, and they had paid the price. He couldn't stand sight of their battered forms any longer. He needed air. Stepping outside, he leaned against the side of the house, the cool night breeze a welcome relief against his hot skin. This is all my fault, he muttered to himself, his voice barely a whisper. I wanted so badly to prove myself, that I ended up almost making the same mistakes that cost the lives of those people before. I let my emotions get the better of me again. And now, I ended up fighting Eevee's prime, just like my other half. What do you mean, that cost the lives of those people before? A voice spoke from the darkness. Kaboo's head snapped up. He looked to his left and saw none other than Lance approaching him. The champion wasn't in his usual attire, he was wearing a simple jacket and jeans, his cape and armor gone. It's you, Kaboo noted. A hint of surprise in his voice. I came here to see how you were doing after everything that happened, Lance addressed him, folding his arms. I was on my way to the Pokemon Center. But I found you here instead. It just so happens that I overheard you speaking to yourself. Lance's expression was unreadable. So, why don't you tell me what you meant by that? And why are you not at the Pokemon Center? Kaboo looked down, thinking. He had promised himself that he wouldn't tell anyone else about his past after confiding in Professor Elm, Ethan, and Chris. But it was too late now. He had been reckless, and this was the consequence. Besides, he still owed Lance a full explanation, and running wouldn't solve anything. It was best to face the truth head-on. All right, I can tell you, he answered. His voice a resigned sigh. Let's go inside. I'll explain everything there. They entered the house, and Kaboo led Lance to the medical room. Lance's eyes widened in silence. As he took in the advanced technology. The sleek, glowing healing tanks were a marvel he had never seen before. Kaboo explained that his Pokemon were under special medical care and would be fully healed soon. Lance was visibly fascinated and impressed by the level of technology, but Kaboo simply shrugged it off, stating it was all from Bulma's inventions. They found a seat in the observation area, and Kaboo let his Saiyan tail, which he had kept wrapped around his waist, relax and uncurl slightly. He took a deep breath, steeling himself, and began to tell his story. The same story he had told his friends, but this time, he added in the parts that were directly connected to what Lance had just witnessed. He started with his origin. He spoke of being a Saiyan from Universe 7, a warrior raw CE with a primal nature and the ability to control and manipulate ki. He told him about becoming a time patroller, a guardian of history tasked with correcting paradoxes in the multiverse. He spoke of the different types of ki, divine ki, primal ki, and how a Saiyan could tap into various forms, even the Super Saiyan transformations. He spoke of the immense power, the pride, and the aggressive spirit that came with it. Then, he moved on to the part he feared and hated the most. He spoke about his nemesis, the demon god Demigra. He recounted the horror of Demigra's invasion of the Time Nest, the pain and the battles that led to his own death, and how he had to be revived by the Supreme Kai of Time. He described the psychological and emotional toll it had taken on him, how the memory of Migra and the words of his enemies from the past still haunted his nightmares, even after all this time. The trauma had left him raw and insecure, constantly questioning his worth and his right to the title of Time Patroller. The more Demigra's words haunted my memories or hallucinations, the more I thought about my death, Kaboo explained, his voice flat and distant. Even after coming back to life, he still hunted me. My enemies from the past tormented me in my nightmares. The constant concern from the people of Tokidoki City, whether or not I truly deserved the title of Time Patroller, it all made me more and more aggressive. Trying to prove that I was not the bad guy. Kaboo paused, his hands clenching into fists as he prepared to tell the hardest part of the story. He took a long, shuddering breath before continuing. I was in a daze of rage, completely blind to my actions, only thinking that I was doing what was right. And one day, I was fighting back this villain, Baby Vegeta, in his great ape form. I was so focused on beating him, on showing everyone how strong I was, that I didn't care about the collateral damage. My aggressive attack sent it crashing into a street of buildings in Tokidoki City. The rubble that fell on the innocent civilians, the people who were still in those buildings, their injuries, the lives that were lost, they were all on my hands. He lowered his head, his lungs tightening and his heart racing as the memories flashed back in his mind. He could still see the dust, the rubble, the terrified faces of the people. When I came to, I saw what I had done. Everyone saw what I had done. They were enraged at my behavior. They immediately considered me as bad as the villains I was supposed to protect them from. They no longer trusted me whatsoever. The only ones who saw past my actions were the ones who had experienced trauma from the worst enemies. They knew what I was going through, and even though I didn't listen to their warnings, they stood beside me. But the damage was done. The words of the people continued to echo in my mind so much that, eventually, even I couldn't trust myself, and I began to lose my pride and my spirit as a Saiyan. So, I had to escape. I had to leave my universe and find the person I trusted again, the Time Patroller that I once was. Out of all the random universes I could have been sent to, I ended up here. He looked up at Lance. A ghost of a smile on his face, a mixture of guilt and shame in his eyes. Well, that's my story. I guess you now know why I'm such a mess and so pathetic. I bet you won't believe me at first, but I have proof. I have Professor Elm to back up my claim, and I can show you my power. There's no need, Lance responded immediately. After hearing you speak so emotionally and watching you in that fight with your Eevee, I can tell one thing. No one who spoke with as much pain as you did could ever make up a lie like that. I believe everything you said. Really? Kaboo asked, a flicker of surprise and relief in his eyes. Lance stood up and walked toward the healing tanks, his gaze fixed on the two Pokémon. He was a professional, and he knew how to read people. He could sense the truth in Kaboo's words and actions. Tell me, how old are you? Lance asked, his back still to Kaboo, his mind working through the implications of everything he had just heard. I'm 27 years old, Kaboo answered, still reeling from the unexpected belief from the champion. Then that makes me more impressed with you, Lance responded, his gaze still fixed on the healing tanks. Most people, even triple your age, would break completely after going through trauma like yours. But I didn't come out of it unscathed, Kaboo pointed out abruptly, his voice tinged with bitterness. I didn't say you did. The champion answered, turning to look at Kaboo, a gentle smile on his face. But most people wouldn't still be trying to find a way to overcome their trauma like you are right now. And I believe you came to the perfect world to do that. How do you figure that? Kaboo asked, his confusion evident. Because being a Pokémon trainer means you need to learn to rely not just on your Pokémon, but also on yourself to make the right judgments, especially in a battle, Lance explained. It's true that there are many strong trainers out there, and many strategic ones as well, but best are those who have a strong bond with their Pokémon, who trust one another to overcome all sorts of obstacles. They grow together, becoming stronger, both in mind and body. Like you, Kaboo assumed, the question holding a quiet hope. Yes, I was originally from this very city, and I've been training with my Pokémon, Dratini, since it hatched. The two of us have been together ever since, and here I stand, a champion. He looked back at Kaboo, his gaze firm. I can see it in you, too. You have what it takes to reach my level. Me, become a champion? Kaboo questioned, the idea seeming alien and impossible. Lance walked back to him, placing a hand on Kaboo's shoulder. You should take some time to rest here in Blackthorn City. Gather yourself, connect with your Pokémon a bit, then get back on your journey. Yeah, Kaboo answered, his gaze falling back to his Pokémon in the healing tanks, still full of worry. Do you think it took me a week to become a champion? Lance asked, guessing the thoughts swirling in Kaboo's mind. It took me years to get to where I am. A few days won't hurt you. I understand, Kaboo responded, looking up at him, a flicker of resolve in his eyes. I'll take the time to gather myself and be with my Pokémon a bit more personally. Lance smiled and nodded in approval, turning to walk away. I'll be here for a few days. If you need me, I'll be at my cousin's gym. Thanks, Lance, Kaboo said, a wave of relief washing over him. Can you also explain things to Claire for me? I'm not in the mood to talk to her right now. Lance gave him another nod of understanding and left the medical room, exiting Kaboo's house and disappearing into the night. As soon as he was gone, Kaboo's attention returned to the healing tanks. Lance was right, he had to be more patient and learn to truly connect with his Pokémon. Only then, once he was able to earn their trust, as well as trust in them, could he hope to regain the trust in himself. I just gotta figure out how to do that, Kaboo told himself. Maybe the first step is to find a way to understand them. And second, I think it's about time to get some people from my universe to give me a hand. Supreme Kai of Time can help with that. The end.